Five bets, 5 minutes. We're going to start the clock momentarily, but Jimmy's in the house. Means we're going to talk a little bit about this Heat game, right? The other side, not so much. Check out the NBA parlay video for that. We welcome you back in as always. We hope you're well. We appreciate you being part of the 50K Strong Plus. Mind you, strong here on the Odd Shopper channel. If you're not, well, fix that. Change that. Just hit the subscribe button. Don't do it for me. Do it for someone. Do it for Andy. Do it for Greg. Do it for Raza. Do it for Lofty. Do it for so many others. Who the hell is this asshole? Don't do it for me. Do it for the people that deserve it. All right. And if you want, hit the thumbs up button. That you can do for me. All right. The small little things I ask. Let's start right away. The clock is moving, folks. All right. So let's get to points. Hey, guess who's first up? Jimmy Butler. Guess what we're going to do? 21 points. That's it. That's all we need. Just 2-1. Hey, Butler is on a tear. The Heat are on a tear. Miami's winning games. Dallas is not. Right. But Jimmy Butler has found made it at least, an artwork now. A piece of art, has made it art. I don't know the fucking phrasing of it, but getting to the free throw line. James Harden is like, damn, that dude's getting to the line too much. Jimmy is a threat, multiple stages of scoring, but when he's able to get to the line and command that on the line, well, now you've got something. And Butler getting 21 points doesn't now have to come from the majority on the floor. It can come a lot from the line. So that's our first play. We'll go to Memphis at LA. Look, check the parlay video for the result of this game, but Ja Morant hitting 28 points is not going to be contingent on whether or not the Grizzlies win or even cover that ridiculous spread against the Lakers. In fact, I think what you're seeing in this win streak is pacing, and it doesn't.
And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Friday, January 20th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by No House Advantage. We got a 9-game slate ahead of us. We've gotten some crazy news, like everybody that exists for the Golden State Warriors not playing today. We've got Mitchell Robinson's first game out for the New York Knicks, which is kind of a bummer. I've been happy to see him playing big minutes, and now those are just gone by the wayside for a bit. Either way, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Happy it's Friday. 2 shows until the weekend, so looking forward to that.
2 shows until the weekend. What do you got tomorrow? Do you have tomorrow?
Yeah, I have a Saturday morning basketball show.
Saturday mornings just don't exist. I'll be at the bar I will be at the bar for 2 hours before you do that show.
Nice. Liverpool playing, I assume?
Liverpool Chelsea tomorrow at 7:30.
Yeah, I'd gotten off of it before football season, but then they dragged me back in when we had to have people start doing football content. So
Just when you thought you were out.
Yep.
Well, we've got 56 minutes to go before we turn this over to Live Before Lock. 9 games to break down. Let's get it started. The New Orleans Pelicans are 1-point favorites. That might not be true. That's definitely not true. They are 2-point favorites in Orlando, 228 total. For New Orleans, kind of the same thing we've always been talking about, but a little bit different. Herb Jones, questionable. Najee Marshall, also questionable, and he's been playing big minutes. Still no Brandon Ingram. Still no Zion Williamson. So for the Pels, Joval pulling a pretty sizable chunk of ownership at 6,800 on DK. Trey Murphy is 14% owned right now at 4,800. Not as much ownership coming into Najee Marshall as you normally see in these scenarios, but I'm still very happy to get to him. I assume the Q tag is keeping that ownership down at least a little bit. Those are the 3 guys that I would sort of want to get to the most. Although CJ McCollum down to 8,700 now. What do you see when you look at the Pelicans?
Pretty appealing team one way or the other, but certainly a chance that they end up being much more appealing by the time we get to lock than they are right now, because you are talking about 2 big pieces of news, even though they're not the best point per minute guys, with Najee Marshall and Herb Jones both being questionable. That's a lot of wing minutes. And if they're out, not only are you probably looking at more playing time for Trey Murphy, you're probably getting Dyson Daniels in the starting lineup. You're probably getting, or possibly getting, some Nance alongside Joval. You're probably getting Jackson Hayes back in the rotation if those guys are out. You're probably getting more Jose Alvarado. So certainly has a big impact. But if we assume those guys are in, there's still stuff to get to here. Joval's projected for 23% ownership on DraftKings at 6,800. That seems a little bit high to me, just given that it's a 9-game slate and there's a lot of center options. But we do still have him with a 17% chance of being optimal. His playing time's been up a bit recently. Larry Nance has kind of just been playing backup center minutes as opposed to really cutting into Joval. I don't totally trust that, in the sense that, a month or 2 from now, I'm not convinced that Larry Nance is just the backup center on the Pelicans. But, I think you're just still going to have some games where he cuts into Joval. But it has at least been good to see Joval more consistently getting those minutes, whereas earlier in the year, it was pretty much all the time that Larry Nance was closing over him. And so at 6,800, there is still some downside risk. If Joval plays 23 or 24 minutes, you're not going to be happy, especially at that ownership. But I think 28 minutes is a pretty fair projection based on their recent rotations. And he is about a 1.2 DraftKings point per minute guy without Ingram or Zion on the floor. So I think that he looks good here. I get why he's getting a good amount of ownership. Trey Murphy pulling 14%. Again, that's kind of a weird one, because if Najee Marshall is confirmed in, I expect Marshall to end up getting more ownership than Murphy. That's just been what we've seen recently. Marshall's about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy compared to around 0.75 for Murphy and Herb Jones. But right now, I think that you're just seeing a little bit of inflated ownership on Murphy and depressed ownership on Marshall as a result of the Q tag. But either way, they're both going to be relatively interesting wing options. And then CJ McCollum in tournaments at 8,700, he's definitely not a priority here, in the sense that you're going to be getting him in a ton of lineups and really building around him. And the reason for that is just because there's so many good guard plays on this slate. You have Luka at the top, but then you also have John Morant in a great spot. You have De'Aaron Fox, you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you have Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. You have a lot of really good guards to get to. So it's going to keep you from just jamming in CJ McCollum. But at the same time, this is somebody that's likely to play 35 minutes or so if this game's competitive. He has an appealing matchup. He sees a sizable bump without Ingram or Zion. So from a tournament standpoint, the upside he gives you at only 5% ownership is certainly appealing.
I didn't mention it before, but just looking at this slate, I find it to be really difficult. I don't think that there's anybody that's just really pulling away from the pack. There's a lot of plays that are just sort of neutral to me. Makes it hard on a 9-gamer, but just generic observation. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was playing around in Fantasy Cruncher and sort of just seeing what my lineups and small field stuff would look like earlier. And I thought it was interesting when I was sort of just simming out the slate. Even the top values, point per dollar values, guys like Ty Jerome or Isaiah Hartenstein, they were still only showing up, 15, 20, maybe 30% of the time, which is just really unusual, especially when you're talking about 3K guys.
I want to hit Avi's super chat quickly. Said, that's a pretty nice one too. Thanks for the picks this week and always. Came in second on FanDuel's $9 out of 3,700 entries for 20K yesterday. So always good to see. When you get those big wins like that, I know it feels good. So congratulations there. 20,000 in the books. Love it. Anything else for the Pels?
No.
On the Orlando end, we've got a Q tag on Franz Wagner right now, which is pretty important. Fultz is available. Still no John Isaac. Still no Chuma Okeke. Not too much to write home here. Wendell Carter Jr. is the highest owned Orlando Magic guy at 10%. Similarly, 13% on FanDuel. If there's no ownership coming into these guys, I have some interest in Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero as like GPP plays, but not that there's any sort of priorities, just they're the type of guys on this team that if they're not getting owned in a matchup against the Pels, I'll take my shot.
Yeah, it's a difficult team to truly prioritize in tournaments, especially if Franz Wagner is in, because this team is just getting healthier. And so you're getting flatter minutes and sort of more unpredictable minutes in terms of floor because you just have so many guys in this rotation. You know, it's a deep team, even though they are bad. They have a lot of guys that just deserve to be in NBA rotations. So like if you look back at their last game against Denver, Paolo Banchero led the way with 33 minutes. Wendell Carter Jr. was at 32. Franz Wagner was just shy of 32. Nobody else topped 30. And so that's sort of the issue here. And they're not expensive, but they're not exactly inexpensive either. But from a tournament standpoint, if you're going to give me a 3% Paolo Banchero, it's kind of like CJ McCollum on the other side of this game. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, you should just go play 25% Paolo Banchero or something, but it's a really good spot in an individual lineup. You know, you're building it out, like thinking of it in terms of if you were hand building a lineup. It's just the kind of guy where it's just like, all right, well, you know, I started out with this really good value. I put in my favorite pay up options. I need somebody in the $7,600 range. Paolo Banchero gives you a very high ceiling at low ownership, even though he's not going to come through all that often. In an individual lineup, he can be a really useful piece. Same can be said for a $6,400 Franz Wagner, $6K Markelle Fultz. The only guy pulling double-digit ownership here is Wendell Carter Jr. at 10%. I think it makes sense. You know, he's a good point per minute guy. He's likely playing 30 to 32 minutes. He's projected to go a little bit over-owned, but if you compare him to like Joval, I don't think Joval's more than 2x to beat Wendell Carter Jr. So even right here, this is a spot, and there's going to be plenty of them, but this is a spot where if you wanted to take that approach, you could move some of your Joval exposure to Wendell Carter Jr. amongst others. But yeah, nothing that I expect to prioritize here, but any of Carter, Fultz, Banchero, Franz Wagner, I think get it done in tournaments.
Just out of curiosity, am I sharing my screen with you?
With me?
Yeah.
No.
The exact amount of Paolo Banchero that I have is 25% off the dummy crunch that I ran to start this show. 25 on the dot.
Because we both end up jamming him in way more than we want to anyway.
No, I had the number that you said. I'm not saying to play like 25% in Paolo Banchero. I was like, well, shit. It's just fantastic. I also got to, you know, a decent sized chunk of Franz Wagner and a Wendell Carter Jr., but I don't mind that. Like, there's just not a lot of ownership coming into Orlando. As far as pivots go, like, I don't have any problem going to the best people on an individual team. Like, it's not as if it's Gary Harris, Mo Wagner, and Terrence Ross that are the guys that are popping up for me. I'm getting the three best guys on Orlando. That'll always work for me. Anything else for the Magic?
Agreed. And the salary has come down a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, Franz is a 0.95 to a fantasy point per minute guy. Banchero, 1.05 to 1.1, depending on the day. Like that. Certainly guys that can pop 40-plus point fantasy upsides and get you where you need to be. The New York Knicks are 3-point dogs in Atlanta, 229.5 total. And the big news here, Mitchell Robinson broke his thumb, so he's going to be out for a while after having been really healthy for a bit, not getting in foul trouble for a bit. Now we're back to not knowing what the Knicks are totally going to do. So let's break down the center rotation first, where we get Isaiah Hartenstein, the flat 3K. I mean, this can't be right. All right. Isaiah Hartenstein, the flat 3K, center eligible, 22% owned. Jericho Sims, the flat 3K, power forward, center eligible, unowned, unless he's like a junior or something, and I have this pulling in incorrectly.
He's projected to be unowned.
Okay. Well, like right away, I'm more interested in Jericho Sims based on what I see there. I don't have a great feel on Isaiah Hartenstein. I think he's probably starting. We've seen in these situations that he doesn't end up getting the minutes that anybody really wants him to get. I gave him 23. I gave Sims 19 for right now. I think those numbers can be moved around a little bit. When you look at this now, and I want to say, obviously, I think Isaiah Hartenstein's an incredible play at the flat 3K as a starting center. That's not what I mean by this, but that's an interesting dichotomy in their ownership. What do you want to do with the centers for New York?
Yeah, so I'd said to you earlier that I think this is a really interesting spot, particularly in large field tournaments. I'm playing more small field stuff today, so I'm not as concerned about figuring out what to do with it. But I think this is a really, really interesting pivot situation because we've gotten 6 starts from Isaiah Hartenstein without Mitchell Robinson this season. In the first one, he played 38 minutes. In the second one, he played 33 minutes. In the 4 most recent, he has played 23, 22, 22, and 17 minutes. In the game against Washington last time out, where Mitchell Robinson got hurt in the first half, Isaiah Hartenstein started the second half. He played 5 minutes and 13 seconds. Jericho Sims played the rest of the third quarter, played the first 6 minutes and 47 seconds of the fourth quarter, and then the Knicks closed with Julius Randle at center. So I think it's likely that you get similar playing time here. I think projecting this to be like 22 minutes for Hartenstein, 18 minutes for Sims makes sense, but you could certainly get a situation where, I mean, it's on the table that you get 2 halves that look like the last one. You get like 12 minutes from Hartenstein, 20 from Sims, and then Randall's playing the rest of the center. That's not the most likely case either. And I guess if you mirrored the second half of last game, it would actually be like 24 minutes for Sims, 12 for Hartenstein, and then 12 for Randall. Like, that's certainly not the most likely case, but it's possible. The Knicks, the other thing that is interesting to me here is, like, as the year has gone on, you've just very clearly seen Hartenstein sort of fall out of favor, where he is not playing the role that he was signed to play.
No.
And like, he is in the sense that he's the backup center, but Mitchell Robinson is playing way, way more minutes than was expected here. And when Sims has played, pretty much all the reports out of New York have been positive. So it just shouldn't be surprising if this ends up being much more of a timeshare than people are expecting, or even if Jericho Sims finds his way into more minutes. And then the other interesting thing is that for the season, Hartenstein's at 0.89 DraftKings points per minute. Jericho Sims is at 0.87. You're talking about like the same guy at the same price. One of them has power forward eligibility, and the one that has power forward eligibility is the one getting 1% ownership, not the one getting 20% or whatever Hartenstein's at right now. So I think Hartenstein's the guy you go to first, assuming he's starting. He's going to get the first crack at playing well. He is, from a projection standpoint, going to project for more minutes, but I don't think this gap is nearly as big as ownership suggests.
No. Oh, you and I are on the same page here. I don't really know what else we could say about it. I would not be playing them together for anybody that's asking that question. On a different slate, sure, not on 9 games. That's just not going to, you're not going to get there. They're not going to play alongside each other or anything like that. Yeah, I'm fascinated by all of it. It's, like, anything could happen, and I think Jericho Sims is ripe to benefit from it, and he is unowned. Now, do I think that he's going to be like 2 or 3%? Yeah,
sure. But
still, that's compared to 20 plus for Hartenstein. Do you think the 22% ownership to Hartenstein is too high?
I think it's a little high, but it also makes sense. The biggest concern I have with Hartenstein is that he's a center only. And so, like, right now, we have him projected for 20.4 DraftKings points. That's nearly 7x his salary because he's 3K flat. But the problem is, especially in large field stuff, on a 9-game slate, if you get 21, 22 DraftKings points from Hartenstein, it's going to be difficult for you to win, especially when you're using a center spot there. It's very likely there's going to be centers today that just go for 50 plus fantasy points out of the mid-range, and you have to then make up those raw points somewhere else, and it becomes very difficult to do. So that's my biggest issue with Hartenstein. I think you don't see this very often, and I hate when people say stuff like this, but I think Hartenstein's a much better cash play than tournament play. I don't mean that in that he's a bad tournament play or something like that. He has a high ceiling. If he just plays well and plays 32 minutes, you have to have him basically. That is on the table. But from a medium projection standpoint, he just strikes me as the kind of guy that is going to be in lineups that have very high medium projections and also sacrifice not ceiling, because in that, again, Hartenstein could just play 32 minutes, but kind of sacrifice that 75th percentile outcome where, Hartenstein does play 22 minutes and you're just giving up raw points.
What do you want to do with the rest of the Knicks? I don't think it really affects them which one of these guys are in, in comparison to Mitchell Robinson, unless maybe you do. RJ Barrett would be the guy I like the most, but I don't really love the Knicks to begin with.
So I do think that I like Mitchell Robinson being out for Julius Randle. In the last game, we saw what we had been concerned about ever since Obi Toppin came back. Julius Randle played 34.1 minutes. Obi Toppin played 13.9. This is why Julius Randle had been so difficult to roster earlier in the season. The two things that have hampered him this year are Jalen Brunson cuts in his assist percentage, and you're getting 48 minutes from Julius Randle and Obi Toppin. Then Obi Toppin got hurt. Julius Randle just started playing 40 to 42 minutes. His price tag skyrocketed. Then Obi Toppin came back and just kept being limited to like 8 to 10 minutes, so it didn't matter. Last game, you got 34 minutes from Randle. That's really, really scary, except for there's a very good chance that the closing lineup tonight has Julius Randle at center and has Emmanuel quickly closing in place of either Hartenstein or Sims. So it opens the door for there to be some minutes where Toppin plays alongside Randle. I think you can get 38 to 40 minutes from Randle while Toppin still plays his 14 to 16. So I do like Julius Randle here. He is pulling 19% ownership, which is probably a little bit high. RJ Barrett, 6,500 small forward. He's just going to play big minutes at a very useful position. I think Brunson is interesting in tournaments in the same way that CJ McCollum's interesting in tournaments. He's pulling 6 or 7% ownership. He's likely to play 38 to 40 minutes and just be a good point per minute guy. But I think the Knicks are just a really interesting team, basically top to bottom.
Okay.
Or
we go over
to starting lineup, I should say.
Sure. We go over to the Atlanta side now. We've got a Q tag on Bogdan Bogdanovic. Trae Young is in, but otherwise, I think we're just kind of getting standard Atlanta at this point. John Collins is the highest owned guy at 13%. I feel like Atlanta sort of looks like Orlando. They're just getting like light ownership to the guys that just always play a lot of minutes. So I have interest in DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, DeAndre Hunter, because if ownership is just going to some other guys at those positions for today, these guys look like perfectly reasonable pivots.
Yeah, DeJounte Murray is getting really cheap on DraftKings. And, obviously Trae Young is probable now, so it's not the same situation it would have been if you were out. But overall this year, still 1.1 DraftKings points per minute in 36.5 minutes per game for DeJounte Murray in the games he's played with Trae Young. That's just too cheap of a price tag at 7,800. He's only pulling 7% ownership, which is down from this morning as well. So I do like getting there. Trae Young only pulling 4% ownership at 9,400. He is, just lumped in with a bunch of really good guard plays in that spot. And the matchup with the Knicks probably isn't quite as appealing as some of those other ones, but the ceiling is still there. It's still Trae Young. The guy can go nuts. And then you just get to these cheap wings where Bogdan Bogdanovic is questionable. If he's in, I think he looks pretty good with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. He's likely to give you around 30 minutes. John Collins at 5,500 should be in that 30 to 32 minute range, most likely. He has been awful this year, but it's still a cheap price tag for John Collins. The upside is there. DeAndre Hunter at 4,800. Never going to be excited to get there, but he's pulling 2% ownership. But for me, really, Trae Young, Murray, and Bogdanovic are interesting if Bogdanovic is in.
Anything else for Atlanta?
No.
This gets pretty easy. Schedule for the rest of the day is quite simple. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. Greg Ehrenberg, Neil Orfield taking you all the way up to 7 o'clock and then some. You get the bonus 30 minutes for those two guys. And I always got to mention it here. 5 days free of our NBA package. If you click the link in the description and sign up, if you've never signed up with us before, you would get access to our projections, our ownership, the Boom Bust tool, our premium Discord, the player compare tool. So you can get all of your 1v1 and 2v2 questions answered right by our projections. The tool is there for you, along with our lineup generator. We generate all of the lineups. We throw away all the garbage. We let you pick from everything else that we have left, whether you want a balanced build, a contrarian build, an ultra chalky cash style build. You can control those inputs and then just sift through the lineups that you like the most. All of this for 5 days free. Stokastic.com, link in the description. Now, the Golden State Warriors are 11-point dogs in Cleveland, which honestly feels like it's too close. 219 total here. The Golden State Warriors will be without Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green. Evan, I guess we're going to get Kuminga back, JaMychal Green back. Ryan Rollins is available. We still have no Iguodala, no James Wiseman. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They got 10 guys. So not a lot of options there. We're getting 30+% ownership going to Dante DiVincenzo, 30 to Ty Jerome, 25 to Moses Moody. Not much coming in elsewhere. I'm a little apprehensive of some of this ownership right now. I'm just going to throw it to you. What do you like the most from Golden State? What concerns do you have? Are you surprised that Jordan Poole doesn't look better?
So my big concerns, there's always two concerns for me when Golden State is shorthanded. One is what the hell is Steve Kerr going to do? Because his rotations, especially when it comes to the bench guys in games that they're clearly punting, are inconsistent at best. The other is how do I navigate Jordan Poole's usage rate and Jordan Poole's inability to make shots on said usage? Because it seems like obviously projection models have, account for his inability to make shots, but it just seems to never actually do it correctly because he never makes shots. But the upside's always there, which makes him appealing. But the big thing is, they do have 10 bodies. 3K Ty Jerome looks good. He's pulling 31% ownership. It's very similar to me to the Isaiah Hartenstein spot. He is a very good point per dollar play. There's nothing wrong with playing him. The thing that makes it less of a priority here and makes me think he is going a little bit over-owned, though, is how strong the mid-range on this slate is. And now we also have a questionable Nikola Jokic as well, so we might not even have as many pay-up options. But, you have Luka in a relatively difficult matchup. Right now, you have Jokic in a phenomenal matchup. But you just have like this really strong 8 to 10K range where it's not surprising if you just get some really big scores there that just make it better to be living in mid-range guys. Like if Ty Jerome hits his projection, or let's even say beats it. So we have him projected for 20 DraftKings points. Let's say he gets 24. So 8x 3K. That's clearly not hurting you unless you get a situation where Luka goes for 65, but John Morant goes for 62 and Trae Young goes for 61. And people are able to just have more balanced lineups where everybody scores more than 30 or 35 raw points. That's certainly something that can happen here, and it would kind of just push you out with Ty Jerome. So that's why I think he's going a little bit over-owned, and it's reflected in the optimal percentage, but still a 21% chance of being optimal is very high. 23.5% on Dante DiVincenzo with point guard and small forward eligibility. He should play mid-30s in minutes, most likely. We were seeing a ton of playing time from him earlier when Golden State was banged up. So I expect a lot of minutes for him. He's played 306 minutes this year without Thompson or Curry on the floor, 0.86 DraftKings points per minute. Jordan Poole in tournaments is interesting. I mentioned it, like he's burned me the last few times I've played him because the guy sucks at shooting, but it's like Dylan Brooks, except without the defense. But still 1.13 DraftKings points per minute without Thompson or Curry on the floor this year, 34.4% usage rate, 31.9% assist percentage. The upside is certainly there. It is a tough matchup. It is a guy who cannot shoot, but the upside is certainly there. You have Moses Moody pulling 26% ownership, shooting guard eligible, 0.72 DraftKings points per minute without those guys on the floor this year. Very similar to Jerome in that I get he's a good point per dollar play. I also don't trust him at all. Kuminga pulling 15% at 4,700. He's about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy over the last couple of years, 0.8 so far this year. It's a team you're going to want to get a lot of. I'm just kind of concerned by the ownership coming into a bunch of guys who suck and are playing the Cavs.
Colorado Kane hit us with the super chat. Barrett or Porter on DraftKings? I guess whether Jokic is in or out, I don't think it matters too much for Porter.
I mean, Barrett would be the one I prefer. They're at different price points, though. Yeah. I like Michael Porter. You're talking about like an 8 to 10 minute gap in projection. So if it's a situation where you're not really upgrading anything by dropping down to Michael Porter Jr., I would prefer going to RJ Barrett. Porter does look better if Jokic is out, but it's not any like night and day type difference.
And then most owned small forward. It's Trey Murphy for me right now. DeAndre Hunter second.
Like actual ownership. I haven't crunched lineups, so I can't answer that.
Okay. Anything else for Golden State?
No. I mean, keep an eye on the starting lineup just because God knows what it's going to be.
For Cleveland, we got the Q tag on Donovan Mitchell. Still no Dean Wade. Ricky Rubio also out for today. Injury management. 10% ownership coming into Garland, 15 to Mobley. Obviously, whether or not Donovan Mitchell plays is a giant trickle-down effect to the rest of this. But if he's in, I don't find anybody from Cleveland all that interesting. Does feel like a game where you just sit Donovan Mitchell now when you're playing against the B team of Golden State. Why risk it? What are you trying to do here with Cleveland? It just looks mostly unappealing.
So first off, David Figueroa said Jordan Poole can shoot, but okay. He's having one of like the 10 worst three-point shooting seasons in the history of the NBA.
You ready for this? 27% from three in 392 minutes when Steph, Clay, and Wiggins aren't playing. 35% usage. That's 52% true shooting.
Yeah. If you just like go on StatMuse and just, I don't remember exactly what the search I used was, but it was something like worst 3-point percentage on like minimum, 300 3-point attempts or whatever. He shows up in like the top 10 in NBA history. So certainly not a very good shooter, but he tries. And that is half the battle in DFS, is he will take those shots. But as far as the Cleveland side goes, we do know that Donovan Mitchell went through shoot around, so I assume he's going to go, but obviously a very, very big piece of news. If he's out, you get Karis LeVert most likely moving into the starting lineup, playing huge minutes and looking very good. You get a nice bump for Darius Garland if he's out. But even if he's in, Darius Garland looks pretty good. He's 10% owned, 8,100 in a very good spot against Golden State. Still a greater than a 1 fantasy point per minute guy with Donovan Mitchell. So it's not as good if Mitchell is in, but still good. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, not overly impacted by Mitchell. You do get a little bit of a bump in production from Evan Mobley if Mitchell's out, but at 6,400 and 6,500 for Mobley and Allen, respectively, they're both just going to look like good plays. Jared Allen's another center pivot. I said there were going to be a lot of them. He's pulling 9.5% ownership on DraftKings right now compared to Joval's 23 to 24. It's not a knock on Joval. It's just that he's not more than 2x to beat Jared Allen. So it's just a profitable pivot if you're looking for a way to be more contrarian within a given lineup. Evan Mobley leading the way with 16% ownership looks pretty good. So I think Garland, Mobley, Allen, the most interesting pieces for me here, assuming that Mitchell is in.
Okay. We good to move to game number 4?
Yep.
The Miami Heat are 1.5 point dogs in Dallas, 218 total. This one will be pretty simple. Bam Adebayo is the highest owned guy on Miami at 6%. Everybody that's normally in for Miami is in. I find Miami to be wildly unappealing, like I normally do. And they're playing Dallas, who plays at an incredibly slow pace, which makes this somehow even worse. So no thank you for the Miami Heat.
Yeah, it's just, if you get to a little bit of Bam, Hero, Butler, whatever, their prices have all come down. Hero's playing time recently has been down as well since he came back, played 30 to 32 minutes his first game back, was tracking to play in that same range last game had it been competitive. If you happen to get that pre-injury game where Tyler Hero plays 38 minutes at 6,700, you're going to be looking really good. But there's no real reason to think that's going to happen based on what we've seen in his return and with this team being essentially fully healthy now. So nothing that stands out here. I mean, Bam should eat against this front court. He is only 8,400, but on DraftKings where he only has center eligibility as well, it's just difficult to build around him.
Mitchell out.
Good. So Karis LeVert looks a lot better. Garland looks a lot better. Mobley looks better.
There we go. Dallas Mavericks got a new one here. Christian Wood joining Mitchell Robinson in the Broken Thumb Club. Maxi Kleber still out. McKinley Wright out. Tim Hardaway Jr. is back. 25% ownership coming into Luka on DraftKings, 25 on FanDuel as well, 12-4 and 12-2 respectively. We're also getting Dorian Finney-Smith at 20% ownership on DraftKings. He was my number one contender this morning, which I didn't even know how to say to people. And I was just like, look, this is, like open your minds a little bit. I get it. Like 3,800, going to play 36 minutes. There wasn't a ton of value out there to be found. Still happy to play Luka. Not the best spot in the world, but if I'm going to anybody, it's just those two guys.
Yeah, it's certainly not the best spot. Luka coming in at 12-4, getting 24% ownership. He's always a good play. I'm just a little concerned about the ownership here because not only is it an expensive price tag for him on a slate where you have a lot of really good, like 9 to 10K guys. The other issue I have is that at least with the way things look right now, I think Luka lineups are going to have like a lot of overlap where like a very high percentage of the Ty Jerome lineups are going to have Luka. A very high percentage of like Hartenstein plus Ty Jerome lineups are going to have Luka. And you're going to kind of run into that issue as well, where not only is he popular, but it's difficult to differentiate within those builds. So again, that's sort of a reason why I think going mid-range is interesting here. If you're going to get a lot less ownership on your 9 to 10K guards and not, than Luka, but then that also allows you to get off of these 20 to 30% owned 3K guys that project for 20 points. It just creates really interesting builds for a couple of different reasons. So not a knock on Luka, but the way things look right now, this would be one of the first slates in a while where I don't really love building around Luka as a top priority. Dorian Finney-Smith, 3,800. I think he's a good point per dollar value. 20% on Dorian Finney-Smith on a 9-game slate is pretty much never going to feel good, especially in a matchup against Miami. He's just not a good point per minute guy, but the minutes should be there for him. They are very thin, particularly in the front court. And so you're probably going to see Finney-Smith getting more minutes at the 4. Maybe they go to a really small lineup and he gets minutes at the 5 potentially. So the minutes are going to be there for him. Overall this year, he's at 0.6 DraftKings points per minute. It's a good glue piece, but also if Dorian Finney-Smith is the reason I can't win on a 9-game slate, I'm kind of okay just not winning on that 9-game slate. So, again, if you're playing 150, really no matter how many lineups you're playing, it just comes down to what the rest of your lineup looks like. If you have a couple contrarian pieces, you have 4% owned Trae Young, you have, I don't know, some other guy that I already mentioned that was low owned, 6 or 7% owned Jalen Brunson, feel free to play Dorian Finney-Smith if you need to. But if you're struggling and you have some popular guys in there, your whole lineup is popular, I wouldn't be afraid of trying to just find ways around Dorian Finney-Smith. The other spot here that I do think somewhat interesting is Dwight Powell at 3K. Same price as Isaiah Hartenstein, 1/3 of the ownership, and a really similar projection.
Yeah. I also think that JaVale is worth a roll of the dice here.
I don't hate it. Like my guess is that he gets like 2 6-minute rotations. But
I think he could start.
Yeah, he could. He could. I mean, they've been starting Wood and Powell next to each other. My assumption is you get the same starting lineup as last game, but with Tim Hardaway Jr. in place of Wood and Finney-Smith
probably
down.
Yeah.
But
I just feel like if they're gonna go to JaVale, like I agree with your assessment on his playing time. They tend to do that from the starting lineup.
Yeah. So the way I'm thinking it through is they're not going to. I assume they're not going to play him and Powell together.
No.
That would be strange. So it would just be him replacing Powell in the starting lineup, which I don't know what. Like, I don't really know what that's doing unless they just want to run it where like McGee plays 8 minutes out of the gate and then Powell plays the next whatever 24 minutes, 16 minutes is.
Yeah.
But like, though, I think the most likely thing is that you get something like Dwight Powell starts, JaVale McGee plays like 6 minutes, Bertans gets some minutes at the 5. McGee probably ends up playing like 10 to 12 minutes. But if you were to just get a situation where McGee plays well and stays out there, he's such a good point per minute guy. It doesn't take a lot for him to just be really good. But I think assuming he's starting, Powell's the one that's just really interesting to me because, again, he's not a good point per minute guy. He's at 0.72 for the season, but still projects pretty close to Hartenstein to only be 1/3 of the ownership.
I totally agree. For the Clippers, they are 7-point favorites in San Antonio, 231. By the way, Najee Marshall out. That is actually a pretty big thing for New Orleans. Although if Herb Jones comes back, I guess it's kind of just like a wash. For the Clippers, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are both available. No Luke Kennard, no John Wall. No ownership whatsoever coming into this Clippers team. And based on everything that I have projected in here, I agree with it. I don't know what I would get here.
Yeah, there's nothing really exciting here. I guess I have to make my obligatory Ivica Zubac is 4% owned and $5,500 mentioned, but his playing time isn't as secure when everybody's in. His production obviously comes down a bit as well. If you want to take some tournament flyers on him, fine, but there's just so many good centers on this slate that I don't think it's a true priority. It is a very appealing matchup, though, against San Antonio. And that's kind of the one thing that does scare me here is you have a 119 implied total on the Clippers. You have some decent price tags. It's not hard to see how like just one guy could really outperform their salary, whether that's Zubac, whether that's a $9,100 Paul George getting hot, $4,600 Marcus Morris just knocking out a bunch of shots in his 28 to 30 minutes. But from a projection standpoint, nothing really looks good. I think Zubac, George, Morris would be the three I would take a shot on first if I was so inclined.
For the San Antonio Spurs, it's sort of the same situation. No one's pulling any ownership. Jeremy Sohan is at 6.5%. Otherwise, we're not really getting it. I have a little bit more interest in some of these San Antonio guys, but not really. Like I'm getting the $6,300 Jakob Poeltl. If he's 3% owned, we already mentioned some other 6K centers that are pulling sizable ownership over that number. Other than Poeltl, though, like to me, there are no priorities here. Maybe you take a shot on Zach Collins' backup night if you want to do that too. But other than the centers, it's not all that appealing.
Yeah, the centers are the most interesting spot to me as well. Poeltl typically is going to play around 26 minutes if he avoids foul trouble. He certainly could play more. Good point per minute guy at 6,300. Collins at 3,800. No confidence in him. I mean, he should play like 16 to 18 minutes on average. But if you do get Jakob Poeltl foul trouble or just a hot second unit, Collins can certainly play more, and he's a good point per minute guy. They're both pulling 3 to 4% ownership. Keldon Johnson's got a 30+% usage rate without Devin Vassell. So clearly the ceiling is there. You just saw it last game when he dropped 60+ fantasy points and you couldn't win without him, but not a spot where he really stands out here going up against the Clippers at what is basically the correct price tag. It's just another team where across the board, I don't think there's any priorities. It's just very low owned guys that you can differentiate with, but nothing that stands out.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else here. So we can talk quickly about No House Advantage. They are the sponsor of this show. If you click the link in the description of this video, you'll be able to head on over to No House Advantage. You can make a deposit. If you deposit up to $100, they'll match that deposit. So if you put in $74, they're going to match it with $74. If you put in the 100, they're going to match with 100. That would be my recommendation. So, oh God, did Ben get me logged out of my No House Advantage account? Don't ask me why Ben's logged in as me in No House Advantage.
But admit to multi-accounting No House Advantage.
Oh, it is? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, let's dive more into why you and Ben are sharing an account.
We were sharing an account because Ben couldn't access or couldn't sign up because he was in New York. So he needed to log in as me for whatever reads, whatever he needed a while ago. And then eventually realized that he was actually just logged in as me when he had to go back to it when those reads came back for him, which was funny to me.
Got it.
But smart to talk about that on a show.
Yeah, I didn't bring it up. I just followed up.
That's fair. Either way, sign up at No House Advantage using that link. Get that $100. We've got No House Advantage projections on our website. We take every prop that they have. We assign a probability to it. You take your over-unders, move on from there, lock them into your lineup, ranking them on a confidence interval. If you don't want to do that kind of work, I don't blame you. We have No House Advantage optimal lineups already generated. The projections that we have are already set up in lineups that you can take and enter directly in to No House Advantage. Take advantage of the deposit bonus. There's no reason you shouldn't start yourself off with $200, 100 of which being yours. Go for it right now. No House Advantage is the sponsor.
You gave me the finger before the show when I said that I spend my time on Twitter while you talk. Now I listen to you and ask important follow-up questions. Do you get mad about that too?
Important? The Indiana Pacers are 9-point dogs in Denver, at least as of right now. 237 total for Indiana. We've got 12% ownership going to Nembhard, 12% ownership going to TJ McConnell still. No one else really getting any love. Obviously, I'd be willing to take a shot on Miles Turner, but I don't find Indiana to be all that interesting. We saw Isaiah Jackson become a guy again now. I don't know what's going on there. I would rather just not get to Indy.
So I think the McConnell and Nembhard pieces are still really interesting on DraftKings in particular, where McConnell is not nearly $7,000. We got 25 minutes from McConnell last game. That was a blowout where he clearly wasn't going to close. We got 27 from Nembhard. He did play garbage time and got like 1/3 of his fantasy production then. They're both interesting options just because overall this year without Halliburton on the floor, you've got about 1.05 DraftKings points per minute from McConnell. You've got about 0.85 to 0.9 from Nembhard. The reason that I prefer McConnell if ownership is equal, and if it's not really costing you anything in terms of that $500 to upgrade to him, is that between the two, McConnell's the alpha in that Nembhard's production is in large part dependent on how many minutes TJ McConnell plays. If TJ McConnell plays 28 to 30 minutes, that really hurts Nembhard because he is basically a zero when he's sharing the floor with TJ McConnell. If you get the game where TJ McConnell plays 24 minutes, Nembhard looks really good because he's probably going to have played like 6 to 10 minutes more than McConnell in that case and get a lot of those minutes without him on the floor where he's like a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. So at similar ownership right now, 12% to both on DraftKings, if the $500 doesn't really change anything in your lineup, I prefer McConnell. If you get a situation like we had earlier today where McConnell's a lot more popular than Nembhard, then I prefer Nembhard. Beyond that, I don't really have much. Miles Turner at 7,100 is a very high upside play. He's 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Halliburton this year. He only played 20 minutes last game. That was a weird game, though, where the starters basically just got benched right out of the gate. Mathurin, Nesmith, Nembhard all played 3 minutes and 28 seconds and got sent back to the bench. Miles Turner made it to 5 minutes and 20 seconds before he got benched. The Thunder opened on a 17-1 run. You're typically getting around 30 minutes from him if he avoids foul trouble and or getting benched. The matchup here is obviously very scary as far as foul trouble goes, but if Jokic gets ruled out, you get the corpse of DeAndre Jordan at center for Denver, which makes Miles Turner's offensive game look a lot better.
The amount of like ridiculous garbage centers that might be available on today's slate from injuries is really crazy right now.
Yeah, I mean, and we already got Sabonis available, so we don't have to worry about Rashawn Holmes. But
yeah, that would have been another one though. We're fixing to get like 8 slack min centers that are available for today or something stupid. All right, I got nothing else for Indiana, so let's go to Denver, where
we fantasy draft slate.
Really would. It really would.
Yeah.
We don't know
this. They all would. That was like the best.
Yeah, that's true.
The best, like the most fun roster build I think there's been in NBA.
I agree. Q tag on Jeff Green, Q tag on Chanchar, Q tag now on Nikola Jokic, probable tag on Murray. We've been talking about it for a week or two now. Like I want to get to Jamal Murray at 6,600, regardless whether Jokic is in or out. I think the Aaron Gordon price is fine. I think the Michael Porter Jr. price is fine. I don't mind getting the Jokic, but if he is out, that changes things pretty dramatically. How are you approaching Denver?
Yeah, so if Jokic is in, I like getting there. One thing that does stand out, right now we have him projected for 9% ownership. That's probably in part because he's questionable, but also with just all of these good center plays, it's increasing the opportunity cost of paying all the way up at that position to Jokic. But it is a fantastic matchup, especially if Indiana were to keep this game competitive. Really, really good spot for Jokic. So I like getting there at less ownership and a cheaper price tag than Luka where I can. But again, I think going balanced on this slate, at least the way things look right now, is a pretty strong approach as well. If he's out, you get increased production for basically everybody. Without him on the floor this year, 1.16 DraftKings points per minute with a 30.5% usage rate and a 26.5% assist percentage for Jamal Murray. He would look great. I'd like him even if Jokic is in. Everybody else is going to like him if Jokic is out, and I still would like him. Michael Porter Jr., 0.94 DraftKings points per minute, 22% usage rate without Jokic on the floor. Aaron Gordon has only played 104 minutes without him, but has averaged 1.05 DraftKings points per minute. He just kind of sees an uptick in everything. And it makes me like Aaron Gordon because we know, even from his Orlando days, but also this year, where we've seen him be better offensively, he's a good rebounder. He's a capable facilitator. He's a capable scorer. So he can just really fill in like a lot of that excess value left over by, Nikola Jokic, because he's giving up rebounding and assists and usage. So makes me really like Aaron Gordon. Again, Gordon looks fine if Jokic is in. He just looks a hell of a lot better if he's out. DeAndre Jordan would probably start at 3,300 and play low to mid 20s minutes, giving you another cheap center. He'd probably be the one that I prefer if we know he's starting over like Hartenstein and Powell, just because he's a better point per minute guy. But I do think that there's still a lot of volatility there. Like I would want to pay a lot of attention to the ownership between them.
Weird slate for Denver. So much like this the Q tags don't really matter. Like if Green is in and Chanchar is out, then I think Green's just Chanchar and vice versa. But obviously a weird trickle down for Jokic. Getting the 3K center right today might be the most important part of everything that we do. So one of them's going to go for like 38.
What if it's none of them?
What if it is none of them? Interesting. The Brooklyn Nets
I'll
are
take my Jared Allen plus.
There you go.
I don't know.
Just so you can get a couple extra 3K garbage guys from the Warriors.
Yeah, exactly.
Brooklyn Nets are 6-point dogs in Utah, 231 total. No Durant, obviously. TJ Warren is available. There is no ownership coming into this Brooklyn team. Nick Claxton was pretty good last night. This is a back-to-back. 6% ownership going to him right now. They're a little bit more owned on FanDuel, where the prices are, I don't know what to say there. They're not better. Kyrie's is better. Nick Claxton is more expensive than he is on DraftKings. But anyway, that's not important. What is important is saying this. Even in what should be a good matchup, I don't think Brooklyn looks good at all.
All that I'm really interested in is Kyrie and Claxton, and they both have basically the same issue, and that is that for Kyrie, now you have Darius Garland, $1,700, $1,800 less expensive. You have Ja in a good spot. You have De'Aaron Fox. You have Shea. You have just all these guys competing at that price point, not to mention, Luka at the top and then value guards. For Nick Claxton, the same thing. You have all of these cheap 3K centers and potentially more coming, but then you also have, Jared Allen, who's less expensive. Joe Val's less expensive. All these guys that are less expensive. But Claxton has been playing big minutes lately, and he is one of the only guys on Brooklyn that has seen a bump in production without Kevin Durant on the floor this year. So I do think that he's getting slept on a little bit. He's played 303 minutes now without Durant, 1.21 DraftKings points per minute, and likely to be playing 31, 32 minutes here. It does make him look interesting in tournaments, even if you put Kyrie on the floor. 235 minutes with Kyrie on and Durant off, still 1.15 DraftKings points per minute for Claxton, who is only getting 6% ownership. So him and Kyrie in tournaments, I think, are very interesting, but still just difficult to get to. Beyond that, I don't really have much of anything. Seth Curry at 5,300. If that beats me, that beats me. Ben Simmons, the concerns I have with him, outside of the fact that he's not capable of scoring, are when Kyrie is in, I just don't feel very confident in Ben Simmons' minutes, especially for a 7K price tag. In the game, the first game without Durant, where Kyrie was in, you got 26 minutes from Simmons because he didn't close the game. Last game, obviously, he got ejected, but he'd only played 14 or 15 minutes in the first half. With Kyrie in, you have that facilitating to where you can take Ben Simmons out so that he can't get fouled down the stretch, and it takes minutes away from him.
God, he's so ridiculous.
What?
On the Utah, just like, it's weird that he just doesn't even shoot free throws too.
Oh,
it's he's just so mentally broken offensively.
Yep.
Still no Kelly Olynyk for Utah. No real ownership coming in here. You're getting a bit to Walker Kessler at 11%. Just add him to the list of like 5K and 6K centers that just continue to look good every single day. No other real ownership coming in here, but I see them as comparable to Orlando to a degree, comparable to Atlanta to a degree, where I don't mind getting shares of some of these Utah guys. I just don't see anybody as a priority. Kessler is my guy, though.
Kessler, to me, is the preferred option. 1.09 DraftKings points per minute this year, going up against a Brooklyn team that has certainly struggled to rebound. Very good shot blocker, so you get that upside as well. 4.9 blocks per 100 possessions this year. I think Walker Kessler looks really good. The only concern, in addition to just the sheer number of centers on the slate, we've seen 3 games now where Vanderbilt comes off the bench with Markkanen in and Kessler starting. So far in those games, Vanderbilt has just been the straight backup center, and I do think Walker Kessler is good. I think Utah is coming to that same conclusion. I'm not convinced that you just get 18 minutes a game from Jared Vanderbilt going forward, but I think expecting around 28 from Kessler, 20 from Vanderbilt is very reasonable. There's the path for 30 plus from Kessler in any given game as well. Makes him look good at 5,700. He wasn't getting any ownership this morning, which I was really excited about. Now at 12%, I think that's around where he should be.
Claw hit us with the super chat. Best guard on DraftKings, 8,300 and under. It's going to be Darius Garland for me.
Yep.
It was De'Aaron Fox, but it's Garland now.
I'll say I'm not even looking right now, but I'm pretty sure it's Darius Garland.
Yeah, it's Garland. Do you have anything else for Utah?
Not really. You already said it. Lauri Markkanen is extremely good. He's also extremely expensive and difficult to get to. Good matchup. The ceiling is there, but he's just really expensive. Conley at 5,400, about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy in a good spot. If you get to some shooting guard, small forward Beasley at 8%, that's fine. But I think the Orlando comp was pretty good. There's guys that I like, and I'm happy if I see them in a lineup, but it's also just not easy to get to them. I did see a question in chat about Larry Nance with Herb Jones minutes monitored. For one, when coaches say minutes are monitored, I typically think that means that they are not limited. I think of it as far as they're going to be like, hey, how do you feel? And he's going to say, I feel great. And that he's going to keep playing. So that's how I normally read into that. Also, you have Jackson Hayes, who has been ahead of Nance as far as minutes at the 4 go. I don't think it's very likely that you're getting any sort of crazy Larry Nance game, unless it's at the expense of Joe Bell.
Yeah, I don't think that news at all changes anything for Larry Nance.
As far as Larry Nance goes, to me, he's the same play basically, where maybe he gets a couple of minutes alongside Jovel, but most likely if he has a big game, it's because either they just decided to close with him over Jovel or Jovel got in foul trouble.
The Memphis Grizzlies are 6-point favorite. Well, actually, 2,300 people in here, 230 likes. I have not asked this entire show. Hit that thumbs up now, folks. That number is way too low. I cannot be turning this over to Live Before Lock with this. We should be up over 400 easy. Hit that button now if you haven't done it already. Memphis Grizzlies, 6-point favorites in LA, 243 total. These late night hammers are both over 240 points. It's crazy. Problem is, damn Memphis guys just don't play enough minutes. 16% ownership going to Morant, 17 to Bane. I'm happy to get to those guys. I don't mind getting to Brooks. He's down to 4,800 with great eligibility. If you get Jaren Jackson or Adams, it's fine. I like the idea of getting these Memphis pieces. I don't see any of them as any aggressive priorities. I might even say that Morant and Bane have like a hair too much ownership. I like them though.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. I think that they're good plays. I think it's a really good matchup. The minutes are the concern for me as well. 17 games this year for Ja Morant, where Bane, Jaren Jackson, and Dylan Brooks, is that right? Have all been in, 9 games where they've all been in. 1.47 DraftKings points per minute, 31.7 minutes per game. Memphis has been in a lot of blowouts this year, so it's always risky just to like look at their average playing time. But even if you go back to that last game they just played against Cleveland, where it was a 1-point win, you got 33 minutes from John Morant. And that's consistent with what Memphis has done in recent years, where they just don't play these guys as many minutes. They don't have to during the regular season. And so that's the knock on him. It's a really good spot. He's 9,600. He looks great. I understand, like, he should be popular. He's a really good play. It just gets into where he's getting 16% ownership. We haven't talked about him yet, but Shea is getting like 7 in a good spot. And you can project Shea to play like 3 to 4 minutes more than Morant. He's getting 4 times the ownership of Trae Young. Yes, he projects better, but you know the type of ceiling that Trae Young has as well. So it's just another one of those spots, kind of like we've talked about with Joe Val and other centers, where I love getting to John Morant. If I'm contrarian in another spot or two in my lineup, great, happy to play him. But there are some just profitable pivots you can make here if you need to. Same can be said for Desmond Bane, 7K. Did play like 32 minutes and have some foul trouble last game, so that is appealing. One other thing that stood out from last game is that they did stagger him and John Morant. They weren't doing that originally when all 4 of the main guys were healthy. Bane was playing all of his minutes basically with Morant. Jackson and Brooks were playing all of theirs together. They went back to staggering them. If that continues, it's going to be very, very good for Desmond Bane. So that, potentially makes him look better. I'm interested in Steven Adams at 5,800, only 8% ownership. Should play around 28 to 30 minutes, assuming the game's relatively competitive. Should get a lot of rebounds from the Lakers not being able to make shots. Just sets up as a really good spot.
We got another one from Claw. Best small forward on DraftKings, 5K and under. This is where it gets really tough. There's like 10 different dudes that project the same. Yeah, so Malik Beasley, Trey Murphy, Lou Dort, DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Dylan Brooks. Like, the guy I have the most there is Trey Murphy. He's the guy that's most owned as well, but I don't have a lot of separation between those guys.
5K and under?
Yeah.
So I can't just say Karis LeVert. If Fantasy Cruncher would load, that would be good. It's not loading, so that's good. I think probably DiVincenzo's too expensive too. Lou Dort is a good one at 5K.
Yeah. Another one I got him. I have Beasley at 27, Trey Murphy, Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann's not in the right salary, but I have Trey Murphy, Terrence Mann, and Lou Dort all at 26.9. A couple more guys at 26.5. Like, it's just a jam-packed area.
Dylan Brooks from this game is a good one at 4,800.
Yeah. All right, Lakers on the opposite side. LeBron's getting about 15% ownership on both sides. No one's really getting anything else. If I were going anywhere else, it would be to Dennis Schroeder. That would make me sick because he's been bad, but he does play minutes. It's LeBron or bust really here, right?
Yeah, that's how I see it. There's just nothing else that I can really even make a case for at their salaries. Westbrook's been playing big minutes. He's up to 8,800. I'm pretty good there. Maybe on the late slate. Thomas Bryant at 5,400 is getting into that, like, it's appealing to gamble on him and hope you get 28 to 30 minutes territory, but you're just not seeing those minutes consistently. Gabriel's taking minutes. You're getting some small lineups with LeBron on a slate where there's a million centers and a lot of them aren't very popular. It's tough for me to get to Thomas Bryant. Again, maybe on the late slate if you want to roll the dice, but I don't really have anything outside of wanting to get to some LeBron because obviously he is exceptional without Anthony Davis.
And we are going to close this one out. We're at 387 likes. That's good work. You got to do it again, though. We need to be up over that 400 mark. OKC, 4.5 point dogs in Sacramento, 242 total. This Oklahoma City team, man, they're like semi-good. They've got a positive point differential now on the season. They are on an incredible run over the past 2 weeks. They are plus 12.5 in point differential, 6-1 in their last 7 games. 6th in offense, the number 1 defense. They're actually 10th in defense for the season with, I don't even know how you could I can't wrap my head around that. They don't have an actual guy that's good at defense at center, generally speaking. Who knows what happens once they get Chet next year. I love this team so much. It's good. Seeing the West with whatever the Pelicans become, Memphis and OKC in like 2 years, is insane, and we're not naming any of the real markets in the West.
I tweeted the other day that I wish they would just whatever the word I'm looking for, proactively or whatever, move Memphis to the East before it becomes just Memphis and OKC in the Western Conference Finals for a decade. Just make it the finals. Let it be more interesting. I don't care about any of these Eastern Conference teams. Orlando's going to be really good though, but
I agree.
There are going to be some ridiculous teams out there.
And the four main guys for OKC do tend to play a little bit better. It's clearly a great matchup against Sacramento. Josh Giddey's getting 18% ownership. Dort's getting 12. I'm happy to get to any of the four main guys today.
Yeah, same. I mentioned SGA when we were talking about Morant. To me, that's just a very natural pivot where, yeah, Morant projects a little bit better, but SGA is playing a few more minutes. He's like a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy in a really good spot as well, getting half the ownership. Lou Dort at 5K, 12% owned, looks good, should play 30 plus minutes. Giddey at 7,700. We got a scary first half rotation from him last game where he played 13 minutes, and it looked like OKC was just doing that thing where they don't play Josh Giddey. They did still get him to 30 minutes, including some garbage time. Didn't close that game out. I don't have any real reason to think he's not playing his normal like 31 or 32 minutes here. But, the price tag is getting up there a little bit. But, yeah, I think all three of those guys look good. Jalen Williams without the Y would be the fourth guy for me here. If Kenrich Williams starts and you want to gamble on him, sure. But for me, I'm pretty much just sticking to Giddey, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Dort.
I agree. And then finally, the Sacramento Kings. Domantas Sabonis is in. We got a Q tag on Terrence Davis, which shouldn't matter. Alex Len is available, as is Matthew Dellavedova. Neither of those two things should matter to you today. Got a bunch of ownership here coming into Sacramento, to Sabonis, to Fox, to Barnes, to Keegan Murray. I probably like Fox the most at 8,200. There's just so much center stuff going around. I wouldn't mind getting to Sabonis. He'll probably look a little bit more interesting if Jokic ends up out. He certainly looks reasonable to me, but I'll take really anything out of the starting five for Sacramento.
Yeah, same boat. I think Fox probably the most interesting to me as well, just because he is only 8,200. So while there's a lot of good guard options, there's not as many in this range. Darius Garland clearly is going to be the one that pulls a ton of ownership in that range, but he's just cheaper than SGA and Young and Morant and all these guys. So you're potentially upgrading somewhere else by getting to him. Makes him look good. I love Sabonis here at 10.5. The problem is just he's a center. If Jokic is out, it makes it a little bit easier to get to him, just in that, you don't have him competing with Jokic at the top end, but you still have that, huge opportunity cost at the position, but certainly happy to get to them. The wings ownership is a little bit weirder to me. Like Keegan Murray's probably giving you around 30 minutes at 4,400. That's fine. Barnes is up to nearly 6K, should play 33, 34 minutes. They look fine. It's just, they don't stand out as like being great values. I think they're kind of just correctly priced.
I think that's fine. I don't have much to disagree with on that one.
Like
anything else?
They look fine.
Okay.
I just don't think they really look any different than like Dylan Brooks or Lou Dort or, these other guys that are cheaper.
Yeah, I think there's just 10 different versions of these guys today. And that'll do it, folks. 9 games up, 9 games down, deeper dive in the books, but we're not going anywhere. Live before lock coming up next. Don't move. Stay on this stream right now. It keeps going. Greg Ehrenberg, Neil Orfield, taking you all the way up to 7:30. We're out of here. Peace.
Let's go. Let's go.
There was a time way back when Doug Peterson, this Jackson, there's a team in Jacksonville now. There's a team in Jacksonville. There was a time when Doug Peterson was with the Philadelphia Eagles and led them to a Super Bowl. There was a time this Jalen Hurts was in diapers when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Doug Peterson was the head coach. This Nick Sirianni was in diapers when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I saw it. I was there. It was one of the most amazing things you've ever seen. Doug is back. The Eagles are back. We got 5-5. Start the clock, will you? Thumbs up, subscribe. Hey, you know the drill, right? Welcome in. Let's start with the Jaguars. Why not start with the Doug P, right? Peterson, Doug Peterson, who is now 5-1 against the spread in the playoffs. That's in the postseason as a head coach. This man covers spreads. Now, you had that one game earlier in week 10. Oh, yeah, where the Chiefs covered. They were favored by 9.5. They won by 10. You know what, though? They were -3 in turnovers. It's a rarity, something that I don't think can clearly happen again. By the way, Peterson's 6-1 against the spread. I don't want to short him by any means. Doug P. behind us, leading another team to victory. How about 3 separate fourth quarter comebacks we've seen before the one against the Chargers where they were down big time? We saw that multiple times this year. I think the Chiefs clearly have the advantage at the quarterback spot, but not as big of an advantage overall. First play is Jacksonville +9. All right, next one. I really like this here, and we're going to move to head-to-heads because I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be throwing a lot. And there's a really good pathway here for Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, to win, to cover, to even blow out the Jacksonville Jaguars, to where the Jaguars are imploding or the Chiefs just aren't doing this with big play after big play. They are moving the football down the field methodically. We've seen shorter passes, quick gets to a guy like Jerick McKinnon, and they haven't been up a ton in which they can kind of exhale and run a clock or even a quarter out. Andy Reid, Mahomes, these guys have been here before. And while Spags' defense hasn't looked great this year, I think that even with some pressure on Lawrence early on, you can cause a turnover, and then you just have Lawrence dropping back. And Peterson's creative enough to make sure that he's just not getting hammered each and every time. All right, let us move to the next game. Our second game here. Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Jalens taking on the New York not Jalens. I mean, this really is about Jalen Hurts, but let's look at this more so than any other play I like from a passing standpoint. 1.5 touchdowns, not bad, but -145 is ridiculous. How about this? All right, longest completion over 37.5. How many? Remember, I watched all these Eagles games for my 50 years. It doesn't matter if you're watching last week or if you're watching the last 50 years. The Eagles' offense stretches the field. They have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, even Dallas Goedert when he's healthy in the middle of the field. Quez Watkins, they want to throw deep. They will throw deep. 38 yards is not that big of an ask when we're talking about specifically Jalen Hurts' longest passing completion. All right, this is now dipping. It's at 41.5. This was at 44. It's down now to 41.5. Take that for what it's worth. This is moving. It's moving.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic NBA Live Before Lock show, and it's a special one. This is not your run-of-the-mill, me tell some dick jokes, make fun of Eric for an hour and a half. No, because we've got something different going on. For the first time ever, Neil Orfield is joining me on the NBA show. So Neil's going to be starting to do some NBA content with us, in addition to all the football content he does, because, football season's winding down, and Neil dipping his toes into the NBA water. So as you guys come in, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't do it for me. Do it for Neil, who's stepping in on Live Before Lock tonight, getting his feet wet. Shout out to No House Advantage, also the sponsor of the show. Neil, how are you doing? Are you excited to be doing this show?
I'm really excited. As I tweeted out my first ever NBA contest, I started playing in 2012. I don't think I really started playing in 2012. I think it was just like I probably had a free promo or something to join, probably FanDuel at the time. But then 2013, my brother invited me over for a Timberwolves game. I hadn't watched basketball since like the 90s Bulls or like Scottie Pippen on the Trailblazers shortly after that. In 2013, I was going over to my brother's house to watch some Timberwolves, decided to throw some lineups in and was hooked, like started playing literally every day from that day forward. NBA DFS has been kind of my grind. This year, it's funny, I'm starting to do content now. This is the first year that I haven't been grinding NBA every day because I've been doing so much NFL content. I kind of switched gears to do more NFL this year. Haven't really focused on NBA yet, but now that I'm doing NBA content, I'm excited to jump back in full-time NBA.
Yeah, and The other things I see, some people are just fired up in the chat. That's somebody who is not Eric that's here. But one thing that's a big similarity between Eric and Neil is that you guys are both very depressed Minnesota sports fans. So we've got the Timberwolves have been not so hot as of late, and a lot of the Karl Anthony Towns injury. The other thing too that's just massively upsetting from a perspective of the Gobert Jazz trade is that Walker Kessler has just been incredible for the Jazz.
I hate it so much. I hate it. I hate it here.
Maybe even probably about comparable to Rudy Gobert, but younger on a cheaper contract and all the draft picks. So we're still going to get some of that depressed Minnesota Timberwolves NBA, a little bit of vibes from Neil, but they're not playing on tonight's slate. So at least you don't have to deal with that. We got 9 games to talk about, and
they're on a winning streak. Just to throw that out there. 1-game winning streak. Go Wolves.
So that'll be another landmark. The first show that you do, that's a Minnesota Timberwolves, because then what's going to end up happening is your most roster players, when we go, position by position, be like, oh, point guard, I like D'Angelo Russell, shooting guard, Anthony Edwards, small forward, Kyle Anderson, power forward, Naz Reid is power forward, eligibility center, Rudy Gobert. So that'll be something to look forward to in the future. And yeah, he's got it. He's got his mug there. So
that was for Malakar.
Was it really?
Doing the cheer. Malakar said, Neil, no, not from Malakar.
Oh,
for Malakar.
Okay.
He asked me to do the cheers again. So I'm doing the cheers with my gigantic Timberwolves mug.
Yeah, I misunderstood. I thought he sent it to you, and I was like, "Oh, he's just sending you."
I wish Malakar never sends me anything.
Yeah, no, me either. Although with that said, I don't know that I really want to regularly give out my address and location on the internet. And most of you guys are great, but I know there's a couple of crazy people out there. So I don't need anything in the mail, but I appreciate you guys' support, likes, and subscriptions. That's more than enough for me. And if you guys have any questions for Neil and I, throw them into the Discord channel. We'll be answering some of those, whether it's related to Neil's basketball fandom, actual DFS questions, anything else, Eric's penis size, whatever it is you guys want to talk about. Discord channel. That's where you could ask me those questions. And we've got some super chats coming in as well. And then we're going to be talking about the biggest issue that we have on the slate, which is Nikola Jokic being listed as questionable to play in a later start time game. But first, banging out some of these super chats. The first one is from The Claw 28. He wants to know who our favorite play is for the utility spot on DraftKings at 7,400 and under. So it could be anybody, Neil. 7,400 and under. Let's see who stands out to me at that price point. So I like Jonas Valanciunas quite a bit. I know it's a bit of a price down, 6,800 compared to 7,400. So you could upgrade one of your other spots, but I'm pretty high on Valanciunas for today, given some of the recent news that we've had with the New Orleans Pelicans. And by the way, that's not just related to Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram being out. They've been out for a little while, but in addition, we also have Najee Marshall out for today. So the impact of that to me is we could see some more big lineups from the Pelicans, potential for them to play Nance and Valanciunas together minutes in the front court. Maybe we also see some Jackson Hayes alongside Valanciunas, but I think just the possibility plays in a couple extra minutes makes him a little bit of a value there. But for you, Neil, 7,400 and below, who's your favorite play on the slate? And it could be anybody because it's utility spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jonas Valanciunas is actually the highest projected play we have under 7,400, unless Nick Claxton was below him. Yeah, I think so. I think he is actually the top projected play. We have him optimal 18% of the time. I think Valanciunas is certainly an interesting option. I'm not really generally inclined to leave salary on the table is my only hesitation here. Like in NBA, I mean, I don't like force in. I set a minimum salary. I started doing this last year on the advice of Bro. After I had a high stakes conversation with him, I started and with a few other people, I started putting in a minimum salary, which I had never done previously for NBA. But now I'm putting in a minimum salary of 49,400. And I guess Valanciunas would be within that range. If you can do 7,400, he's 6,800. You could, but if I were to play Valanciunas, I would be likely to try to upgrade somewhere else. But yeah, I think Valanciunas, if you love your lineup, you have 7,400 left over, I think it's fine to leave 600 on the table. I think I'm probably with you there. Yeah,
and the other thing too is you could always upgrade one of your other spots, right? So obviously, I don't know the Claw's entire lineup, but with that said, if there is a player that maybe you're on the fringe about or you're not totally confident, just use that $600 to upgrade that player, because I do like Valanciunas quite a bit. And I know Steven Leibowitz wanted to know how I know about Eric's manhood. And the reason is because he's been suspended multiple times from this company for getting naked on meetings, not knowing his camera was on, things around there. Everybody who works here knows it. It's just one of those things that happens. It's kind of like banking a GPP, seeing Eric's penis. These are things that just happen in the DFS industry. It's part of the gig. Hippopotamus.
Steven, are you new here? I know that you're not, but like, why do you even ask that question? Actually, can I say one more thing though? So I would probably be hesitant I would probably go somewhere else if he is in your utility spot, just because that game starts at 7. A lot of the best games on the slate start later. Yeah. So I'd probably want to save salary. We don't have a ton of questionables left on this slate. We've got obviously Jokic, but you never know what's going to pop up. We've got a lot of high total games later on in the night, so I'm kind of more inclined to wait a little bit. So, but I don't know from those later games who I would throw in there. So, I mean, who knows if you actually need a 7 o'clock player? If you already have a 7 o'clock player in your center spot, obviously swap it out. But just something to keep in mind that we're always looking to late swap when those opportunities arise.
That's a very good point too. Is that the utility spot? I mean, if he has, I don't know, just thrown out like who's the most popular projected center on DraftKings right now? It is Larry Nance is projected for a bunch of ownership, Evan Mobley, Kevin Love. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you got like Domantas Sabonis in your center spot right now. You just put Valanciunas in the center spot and then Sabonis in the utility. So that's a good shout out by you though, Neil, is just to make sure that you do have the latest start time player in that utility spot. Hippopotamus. I need a Neil's nobody. Give me your favorite player. Okay. I kind of like this concept. All right. So we're going to call this a Neil's nobody. Your favorite player under 10% owned in the utility spot. Like it's an NFL showdown. Give it to me now, Neil. I'm a hungry hippo. So I kind of like this as a thing we could do with you. The Neil's nobody play of the slate. So kind of similar to what you do with your NFL showdown DFS content. Who is your favorite sub 10% owned player of the entire slate? And we've got, I see Mike on top of it. He's already got the ownership pulled up. So how about you do it for DraftKings and I could do it for FanDuel? How does that sound?
That sounds great. This is so much easier for NFL Showdown than a 9-game NBA slate. I'm sorting by ownership here, or no, I'm sorry, sorting by optimal odds here. And the first player who really stands out, I mean, Jokic is there, but we're not sure Jokic is going to play. Bogdanovic looks great. He's 5,000, just projected for 8.2% ownership, 15.5% chance to be an optimal. I like that. He's our highest in terms of optimal odds. He is our best for players that are under 10% owned outside of Jokic. So I'm just going to use the tools here. I like to rely on the tools. I think this is a spot where you can rely on the tools. You didn't give us any kind of price range or anything like that. So kind of made it easy on us in that sense. I think Bogdanovic looks like a great play.
Yeah, also another one where it's always tricky projecting the ownership for guys who are a little banged up. So, like Jokic is questionable, Bogdanovic is questionable. So players who obviously look good if they're in, but depending when they get ruled in will also, have an impact on their ownership. So yeah, like Jokic, for instance, on FanDuel is 6% owned. If he ends up playing, that's like the best GPP play on the slate, but we're going to talk about that in a second. I very, very highly doubt Jokic plays today, and we'll talk about some of the fallout of that. But for me, if I'm going to go to sub 10% owned, all right, so let's see. I ran my lineups. Who did I end up getting to? So one that stood out to me is Clint Capella at center, who's projected for no ownership on FanDuel, 0.6%. His minutes restriction is expected to be lifted. Well, not lifted, I should say raised today. So he's expected to see somewhat extended minutes. It's hard to know exactly what that number is going to be, but just on the off chance you get close to full minutes from Clint Capella, let's say you get 26, 28 minutes from him, that's potentially somebody with a lot of upside at a price point, especially on FanDuel, where we're going to get extra fantasy point for each block and the defensive stats. So at no ownership, we've got Clint Capella projected for 0.6% ownership. I think that's a good large field tournament option. So Hippopotamus, I hope that feeds the hungry hippo there.
Can I throw one more out there just because we are talking the utility spot? I talked about how much I like late swap. I'm a sucker for Jaren Jackson Jr. Just always comes in low owned because of the foul trouble. Like he's a pretty volatile player, and he's coming in projecting for 4% ownership with an 8% chance of being optimal at 7,300. I do really like Jaren Jackson Jr. as well.
The next super chat we have is from my filler arc. He wants to know forward on DK, Nance to make them dance, or DiVincenzo to make them pizza. That one doesn't really rhyme. Or Murphy to make them Urfy. All right, so the Nance to make them dance, I kind of get. The DiVincenzo to make them pizza, less so. Trey Murphy to make him Murphy, the least of the three. We gradually went down in quality of those as we went through. So the three players that my Phil Arc is choosing in between, without the nicknames, because I don't want to make it confusing. Nance, Murphy, or DiVincenzo. Which one of those three is the highest priority for you tonight?
I think I would probably go with DiVincenzo. 5,100 projects very well. He is coming in pretty high on 29% projected ownership, but 21% chance of being optimal. And, I'm hesitant sometimes with these guys that are, we have Nance projected for 23 fantasy points, but that's still not, we don't know that that's going to be enough to be optimal. Obviously, it can spike up much bigger upside than 23 fantasy points, but I'd rather take the safety and I think a higher ceiling in DiVincenzo.
Yeah. And the other big thing too about DiVincenzo, which, everybody knows by now, the Warriors rest situation, where we have got, like this entire team sitting today, where we have, just pulling up the injury report right now for the Warriors, which is not surprising. Tail end of a back-to-back. They played a big national TV game last night, and it went to overtime. So it stood to reason the Warriors were going to rest players. When I was doing the strategy show this morning with Adam, we brought this up as a possibility. And then what ends up happening? Steph Curry out, Draymond Green out, Andre Iguodala out, Klay Thompson out, Andrew Wiggins, all of them are out. All of the usage and playing time in the world is available for this team. Jordan Poole is going to take a ton of shots. And then as far as the role players go, I think DiVincenzo is the one who stands out the most. So that is going to be my answer there for you, my Phil Arc, Dante DiVincenzo. As for super chats, I was going to say we're caught up on them. And then a couple more ended up coming in. Ace of Spade, Giddey or Claxton? It's a tiers question, so we don't have to worry about ownership. Just who do we prefer, Giddey or Claxton?
Good question. It's probably going to be Giddey, I would imagine, but
yeah, I'm looking through right now. Giddey or Claxton? Off the top of my head, I feel like it's pretty close. Yeah, here's how close it is. I've been separated by 0.3 of a fantasy point, leaning towards Josh Giddey. Close one, but I'm going to lean towards Giddey. For what it's worth, also he's $300 more expensive in the classic contest on DraftKings. Usually at least a little bit of an indication that he's somebody who should be projected a little higher. But like I said, really close margin. By the slimmest of them, I have Josh Giddey there.
I'm with you.
The Claw, another follow-up. So now he wants to know, for our favorite utility, $6,300 and under on DraftKings. So before he had said $7,400 and under. Now he wants to know for $6,300 and under.
6,300.
Okay. This is a pretty easy one for me for a couple of reasons. It is Aaron Gordon. So Aaron Gordon for me is somebody who already projects fairly decently. And then, like I said, we're going to get to that Jokic news in a little bit. I don't think Jokic plays today. That would make Aaron Gordon look even better. So multiple reasons there. I think Gordon is the guy.
I like that call. Yeah, he's just going to look even better when Jokic is likely to be ruled out. So yeah, that is a fairly easy one now that you call it out.
Let's see if we had any more super chats come in, because just before I thought we were all caught up on them, then a couple more came in. We got those. So let's hit on the Jokic scenario, and I'll tell you why I don't think he's going to play. And obviously, I can't say this with 100% confidence because I'm making an educated guess, but the Denver Nuggets are the biggest favorites on the slate, or at least they were coming into the day. 11.5-point favorites. Jokic has shouldered a massive workload as of late, and this is just the spot that it makes sense to give your star player a rest night. It's the tail end of a back-to-back. He said triple-doubles in the last 3 games. He's not had a game without a triple-double since January 11th, and that was a game where he had 21 points, 18 rebounds, and 9 assists. So huge workload for Jokic as of late. And it's not just, not a back-to-back, but they played a back-to-back 2 days ago. It's a home game. They were double-digit favorites. He got downgraded from not on the injury report to questionable. And these are all of the things I kind of look for in a rest spot. So that's why I think he ultimately doesn't end up playing. And then if he is going to be out, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., all guys that would look better. As far as cheap guys go, it would kind of be hard for me to prioritize any of them. DeAndre Jordan would probably play extended minutes, but he sucks. He's somebody who's really hard to have a lot of confidence in. Even in some of the games where we've seen Jokic be out, it hasn't necessarily meant big minutes for DeAndre Jordan. It just meant more minutes. He did play 26 minutes the last time Jokic was out because DeAndre Jordan is terrible. Led to 18 fantasy points. So the guys I'd really be prioritizing if Jokic is out, it would be Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. But how are you going to handle the situation, Neil? Because it is a later start time.
Yeah, I mean, so the nice thing is, even though it does start at 9 o'clock, we do have 3 more games starting. We have the Brooklyn Utah game starting at the same time, and then 2 other games after that. So we really will have hopefully some late swap opportunities when we find out whether Jokic is playing. I think that if Jokic does end up playing, he's going to be somebody that I'm going to have to prioritize a little bit, just because nobody's going to be on him. So if you can get him into your lineups, I'm going to play him. If he is ruled out, I think that I will have some interest in the corpse of DeAndre Jordan, just because, as you said, he played 26.5 minutes the last time out against the Clippers. They're probably going to need him against Miles Turner. So I would imagine that DeAndre Jordan is going to get a good amount of run if Jokic is ruled out, which, as you say, is likely. But then everybody else just gets a boost as well. And honestly, that's I'm going to rely on the tools. I can't tell you exactly who I'm going to prioritize, but I'm going to make sure I late swap throughout the night, like literally before every game starts. Or if we get any kind of news at all that is different from like a starting lineup that's different than what I'm expecting, I wait until our projections update. I wait until our tools update, and I late swap accordingly. So I imagine, as you say, Aaron Gordon is going to look great if Jokic isn't out there, and we'll find some other players that we want to prioritize a little bit more as well. But I think that I'll have some interest, at least, in DeAndre Jordan. You think you would be like zero interest in DeAndre Jordan, or think, because for me, he's so cheap and he's a center. So I think he's got higher likelihood of the double bonus, which I always love that. A cheap center when you can get him starting. I tend to, I like that a bit. So I will have some interest, but obviously we've got a lot of great options. You can only play 2 centers. So not a huge priority, but I will have some.
Yeah, I would say that I would have some as well, but he'd be my 4th favorite Nugget. In terms of the players that I would expect to have exposure to, it would be number 1, Aaron Gordon, number 2, Jamal Murray, 3, Michael Porter Jr., then 4 for me would end up being DeAndre Jordan. So relative to the other guys, it would be less interest, but yeah, he'd be somebody who I would have no interest in at all if Jokic was playing, to, some amount of interest, but still other value plays that I do prefer to him on the slate. And then also just there are a lot of good center plays, especially on DraftKings today. FanDuel, I probably wouldn't really consider DeAndre Jordan. We could only play 1 center, and the min price is higher. But at least for DraftKings purposes, I like Valanciunas. I like Sabonis. Jared Allen's another center that stands out to me. Evan Mobley is center eligibility. Larry Nance, power forward and center. And these are all guys that I do think I would get to ahead of DeAndre Jordan. And by the way, how I've been handling some of these situations where if I have a lean, but I'm not necessarily 100% confident that Nikola Jokic is out, and I brought this up on other shows, I'll give a thumbs up in Fantasy Cruncher to Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., DeAndre Jordan, the guys who are the core players that are expected to benefit, and at least we'll get them into my player pool. And then I can make more definitive updates if and when Nikola Jokic is rolled out. But at least for now, it gives me these guys as placeholders. So that's a way that I found is like a pretty good way to approach. Is there anything like that you're going to be doing, or just kind of play it as it goes as guys are rolled out?
Yeah, so if you've watched my showdown videos, anybody who's watched those knows that I actually change projections. Like, it's actually something that I do throughout the night, is I just incrementally change projections a bit until I get to exposure levels that I like. So same kind of concept, though. I'll just incrementally boost those guys' projections so that they're going to be in my player pool rather than giving them the thumbs up. The thumbs up does seem a little bit simpler. Maybe I could just do that, but I do actually. And while I'm doing shows now, I don't know how that's going to work out, me trying to adjust projections. So maybe I'll start using your method. Maybe that's a little bit easier when you're on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely something that seems like a good method there. I wanted to say DeAndre Jordan, just looking at his per 36 stats, which I know he's not going to play 36 minutes, so not all that useful, but 12 points per game, 13 rebounds per game. I don't know. Do you think that he has like the upside to play 30 minutes in a game still in his career, or do you think he's past that point?
No, I don't. And the other thing too that we should mention, Lee sent me this note, which is really helpful. So Lee, you guys probably have seen him on DraftKings FanDuel. His handle is B Calicor. He's been helping out with the projections here. He sent me a note too as he was listening to the show, is that Jeff Green is questionable today. He could be returning, and that's somebody else who would likely play some center minutes. So we have not seen Jeff Green play in a minute. The last time Jeff Green was active for a game was December 23rd. So we're looking at about a month that he's been out. He's not going to play massive minutes, but even if he plays 14 minutes and a bunch of those are at center, those are minutes that would come from DeAndre Jordan. So that's the kind of spot too that would have some sort of impact on Jordan. But once again, Jeff Green himself is questionable. Vlatko Kenkara is questionable. Jokic is still questionable. So there's a lot of different pieces here that are moving. As for the results for DeAndre Jordan overall as a starter this year, he has made 4 starts, averaging 27 minutes per game and 22 DraftKings points in those starts. So probably about what I would be expecting from Jordan, somewhere around low 20s fantasy points if he was in the starting lineup. But still some other pieces to go. And also, he might not end up starting. So that's how I'm handling the Jokic situation. It's obviously the biggest scenario of the entire slate and something could change a lot. And if Jokic just end up playing, I agree with what you said before, Neil. This is a guy in Jokic who has as much upside as we've ever seen from anybody for fantasy purpose. He's minus 110 to win his third consecutive MVP at sportsbooks right now. And he's going to be drastically under-owned in this spot if he's ruled active. So like you said before, it seems like somebody you would prioritize swapping to if he is ruled in.
Yeah, absolutely. He's maybe the best fantasy player in the game. I guess Luka's up there, but he's up there as far as the best fantasy players in the game and will be unowned on this slate. And we should have some late swappability just because we have so many games starting late. So I'm going to like him quite a bit.
We got some more questions that are coming into the Discord channel now. So some of the questions we've got, this is from Just Locks. I want to run a lineup with Ja and LeBron on FanDuel for GPP. Who are some of the cheap options for shooting guard, small forward, power forward that you recommend to try to save some salary with? So let me look at the lineups that I've built out on FanDuel and just see which are the cheap players that ended up coming out most often over on FanDuel. And so just to reiterate what I said, he got Ja and LeBron in his lineup, and then he wants to know the best cheap options for shooting guard, small forward, power forward. While we're here, I should also mention, if you guys want access to our Discord channel, you can sign up for Stokastic Plus Platinum membership, but also 5 days for free when you sign up for the first time. So if you guys have never tried out any of our Stokastic tools, now is the time to sign up because it started the new year. We changed our free trial from 3 days to 5 days. If I'm not mistaken, Neil, didn't you start on a free trial?
I did. I started on a free trial, and as the story goes, I was on the free trial, hit for 100,000, which was like the first. I think prior to that, my biggest hit was like 20,000, and then I hit for 100,000. And I literally I don't know if it was that night or the next morning, but certainly before the next slate, I had signed up for the full Stokastic package. I had been hand building prior to that, so then started using Fantasy Cruncher and had a lot more success after I had access to the tools in Fantasy Cruncher and stuff. So yeah, free trial certainly worth doing, even if you don't add Fantasy Cruncher onto it. You can use the Boom Bust tool, which is very helpful.
Yeah, so there you go, Neil, a success story of the free trial, and he's made it all the way to sitting here and listening to me talk about Eric's penis. So this could be you as well. If you want to hear stories about Eric's penis in front of a handful of people on a YouTube channel, go sign up for a free trial on stokastic.com. So Just Locks anyway wanted to know about our cheap shooting guard, small forward, and power forward favorite options over on FanDuel. So here I'm going to sort by the exposures I have, and these are the players that for cheap I have the most exposure to at each of those positions. So shooting guard, Dante DiVincenzo on FanDuel. I think that is fairly easy as a secondary option. And this also is going to apply to small forward because they're both shooting guard, small forward. So we'll just group them together. Caris LeVert and Dante DiVincenzo. I think those are two guys, $5,100 and $5,600. Make for really strong options on FanDuel and advantageous spots. And then the other one he wants to know was power forward. Let's see, cheap power forward.
I mean, I would also throw out Jonathan Kuminga. Looks like the highest optimal odds, and he's only 4,500 at small forward. I just had a power. Oh, JaMychal Green actually looks really good. 13% chance of being optimal. He's only 3,600 at power forward. Looks kind of interesting. Kevin Love actually is only 4,400 with no Donovan Mitchell in there. Should have some increased usage.
Yeah, I think all of those. So it's funny. All of these are just going to be the core players that are benefiting from injuries. And also, if I look through my lineups right now, the players I get the most exposure to, and just by far, my lineups are littered with Cavs players, Warriors players, and Nuggets players right now. Just all I don't think Jokic plays. We've got Donovan Mitchell out, and then we've got everybody out for the Warriors. That's just where my exposure lands. And that's where I think a lot of the places you guys should be looking for value. So it's kind of been echoed too in the players that Neil and I just talked about. It's all guys from those teams. Right? These are the guys who are in like that cheapish mid-range FanDuel and DraftKings that I think make for the best options, especially to enable you to spend up for some of the studs you like there, Just Locks. The next question is from Blinky. With Kuminga and DiVincenzo having negative leverage scores and no one having an optimal percentage above 20, is it okay to fade Golden State in GPPs and mid-tier in the evening on FanDuel? I wouldn't fade them. If you want to say that you think some of these individual players are too popular and you'd be a little bit underweight to them, I think that's okay, but I think it's super risky, especially in NBA where, it's a little easier to predict than say a sport like football. There's, no touchdown variance or stuff like that. I think it'd be a mistake to have no exposure to DiVincenzo today.
Yeah, it would probably. I mean, depends on how many lineups you're making, right? Like, I think if you're making one lineup, I think that's fine. If you want to fade the Warriors entirely and hope that Steve Kerr just plays everybody, 24 to 26 minutes and nobody really gets there. But it's unlikely that none of the Warriors players get there. Like, it would have to be a really thin margin for none of these Warriors players to get there. So I'm generally going to have at least one Warriors player in every lineup.
And we've got some more super chats coming in. This one, T. Lee wants to know, who are favorite plays for single entry or just position by position as we get closer to lock? Yeah, I could read off right now. By the way, we just got the starting lineup for the Pelicans. It is McCollum, Dyson Daniels, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Jonas Valanciunas. Do you have any lineups built out, Neil?
I have. I've started building up. I think I still need to submit them. I've started building up my DraftKings lineups.
Okay,
just a little bit.
Do you have an idea for who some of your most rostered players are at each position? You could do it for DraftKings, and I would do it for FanDuel.
Yeah, if you start, then I will
sure.
give you an idea.
Or I could also just do it for both of them because I've got them both built out in front of me. And also a lot of these are going to be similar players across the two sites.
Yeah.
But point guard for me, FanDuel, the ones I have the most exposure to right now are Garland. So actually I realized that I need to have this run updated for Jokic potentially being out. But anyway, point guard, Murray's going to be in this after I update, but Garland, Fox, Jerome, and Murray. And then shooting guard, also a lot of the same guys, but LeVert would be in the mix, as is DiVincenzo for small forward. Also, DiVincenzo, LeVert, Kuminga being another one to prioritize at small forward. Power forward, Sabonis, Aaron Gordon, JaMychal Green, all guys that I think make a whole lot of sense over for FanDuel. And then center also, we've got center eligibility for JaMychal Green there. Evan Mobley's another one that stands out, as does Nick Claxton. Are you good on DraftKings, or you just want me to read some of those off as well?
Yeah, so I can tell you what I'm getting right now.
Sure.
I am still going to be adjusting as I go because I'm getting to 96% of Darius Garland. Like, I'm probably not going to want to have, maybe I will have Darius Garland, but some of these players I'm getting a ton of that I'm going to want to cut back. So it might change before lock, but currently I'm getting to a ton of Darius Garland. I imagine I will still be getting a ton of Darius Garland come lock. I'm getting to a lot of Ty Jerome and Dante DiVincenzo. I think that I'll probably cut back a bit on the Jerome. So those are my three at point guard. Ty Jerome also at shooting guard. Bogdanovic, as I said, I'm going to be playing plenty of interest there in Bogdanovic. Moses Moody, also a shooting guard, another Warriors player that I'm going to have mixed into some of my lineups. Karis LeVert, I actually think I'm going to try to get a little bit more of. He doesn't actually project well enough, even with Donovan Mitchell out. He's not projecting so well that I'm getting a ton, but I think I'm going to give him a little bit of a boost just because I think that is a game environment where things could just go completely off in that game. So I think that I'm actually going to increase my Karis LeVert a little bit at shooting guard, try and get above the field there. At small forward, again, it's DiVincenzo, Bogdanovic. I'm getting a bit of Dorian Finney-Smith. And then again, I'm going to be boosting my Karis LeVert a bit. I might also boost my RJ Barrett just because I kind of like that game environment. On the other hand, it is right at lock, I believe. So, or I guess it's a half hour after lock. So can't really take advantage of as much late swap, but I do like RJ Barrett in a matchup with the Hawks a little bit. Power forward, I'm getting to a ton of Larry Nance. Probably going to cut that back. I think that's one of the spots where I'm going to really try to cut back, just because he's 3,400 and we're projecting for 23 fantasy points. That's why I'm getting a ton of Larry Nance, but I think there are a lot of other options that interest me, including Julius Randle. I'll probably get a little bit of a boost to. And like you said, Aaron Gordon, I think I'm going to give him at least a thumbs up right now and try and get more Aaron Gordon in that power forward spot. Evan Mobley, also interesting there. And then at center, getting a lot of Valanciunas, Evan Mobley, Larry Nance again, and then Jokic currently is coming into my lineups. Maybe I'll need to group out my my Jokic, and I don't know if I want to group out Jokic and Aaron Gordon just for the different scenarios. But what do you think your approach is going to be with Jokic? Are you just going to give him a 0 right now and then adjust if he is in, or what do you think you're going to do there?
So what I took him out of my player pool, and then I gave the thumbs up to DeAndre Jordan, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr.
Okay.
And that to me, I felt was the best way to handle it as of now. And then if things change, then I could change it later on. By the way, just to, because somebody asked which Murray, because I just said Murray, Jamal Murray, assuming that Jokic is going to be out. So that was why he ended up being one of my most rostered guards for today. We'll hit on some of these super chats, then we'll get back to Discord. And Ace of Spades said, my questions are being missed. So we answered your question, but you might have not heard. So I'll reiterate. So you asked us a couple tiers questions. And the first one was one of them was Fox versus Giddy, or it was Giddy versus Claxton. That was the one. And yeah, so that was Josh Giddy was Neil and I both agreed on that. And then as for the other questions, we just didn't get to the other one yet. So I've got some super chats here to answer Ace of Spade. The next one that he'd asked was Fox or McCollum. For me tonight, that is, I'm pretty sure that's De'Aaron Fox. Let me check though. Fox or McCollum. Yeah, that is De'Aaron Fox for me. And I know that McCollum's benefiting from all the guys who are out from New Orleans, but at the same time too, De'Aaron Fox is just as such a terrific matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers and what's expected to be, against the Oklahoma City Thunder and what's expected to be the fastest paced game alongside the Lakers-Memphis game. So I like getting De'Aaron Fox. McCollum also is not a bad tiers option, but I have a slight lean towards De'Aaron Fox. So Ace of Spade, if there's any other questions that you had that I missed, we will certainly just throw them into YouTube chat. It doesn't have to be another super chat and we'll answer that. But the other one he asked was SGA, Randall, or Ja Morant. Of those guys, it is for me. Boy, this is very close between Julius Randle and Ja Morant. I'm going to lean slightly towards Morant. But Randall's been a monster as of late. There's no doubt about that. But for the year, I think Morant is somebody who's ultimately going to be the better fantasy producer going forward. So lean towards Morant for me. But Neil, Ja Morant, Julius Randle, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Who is your favorite of those three?
I think I'll go with Julius Randle in that one. He just projects slightly better. I love the matchup with Atlanta. It is, as you say, it's very close with those two in particular between Morant and Randle. But I think I'll lean Randle just to just to make it confusing for him. We didn't give him a straight answer. Two different people giving two different answers.
The next question we have in here is from Zarek Mack. Who are the top value players to roster today? I believe he meant roster, but we could roster them as well. Top value option. So he didn't specify a site, but Neil, who are it's going to be a lot of the same guys across DraftKings and FanDuel, but I mean, the likes of, depending what we're considering the cutoff point for being cheap. I mean, Ty Jerome, Dante DiVincenzo, Karis LeVert, Larry Nance. These are the guys that I would call the best cheap players on the slate.
Moses Moody, throw him in there. Yeah, those are the value. Dorian Finney-Smith, pretty good value.
Yeah, so if there's anything more specific, once again, you don't have to leave a super chat. If you meant a specific price point or anything, just throw that in the YouTube chat and I'll answer that as well. But I think that really does cover who the best cheap options are of the night. The next question is from our guy Jorge. Jorge wants to know, would you have lineups that have both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in them also, in honor having this shaman of NFL showdowns on an NBA show? So hopefully Neil is enjoying being here and he'll be on many more of them going forward. But first, Neil, Jorge's happy to have you here. But then also, any issues with having Allen and Mobley in the same lineup? There's maybe a little bit of negative correlation there, but at the same time, too, they're both relatively cheap enough and benefiting from the absence of Donovan Mitchell. Like, we've seen some big games from Evan Mobley this year when Mitchell's been out. That it's, to me, because I know, Jorge, you play on DraftKings, $6,400 for Mobley, $6,500 for Jared Allen. They're both underpriced to a point where it's okay to have them in the same lineup. Do you have any reservations about it?
Yeah, I agree. It's not something that I'm going to group out. And I was just looking through my lineups. Literally, the second lineup that was generated for me has both Allen and Mobley. Certainly, you can play them together.
Yeah, my highest projected lineup doesn't have both of them, but my fourth highest projected lineup has both of them. I don't think it's too problematic. The next super chat we have is from Steven Eckelman. He wants to know, for under $6,800 utility on DK, TJ McConnell, maybe Adams, or maybe somebody else. Let me see. Under 6K.
6K or 6,800?
Under 6K. So I assume he means $5,900 or under.
Got it.
That is Steven Adams for me. So Karis LeVert is fairly close as well. And to me, Karis LeVert is a much higher priority play than Steven Adams, but I do have Adams projected a little bit higher, but because of positions and then also LeVert being cheaper, I get more exposure to LeVert, but pretty good chance you have LeVert in your lineup somewhere else. But Steven Adams is the one who projects the best for me under 6K.
And I think I'm seeing Walker Kessler is
Okay.
5,700. I'm looking at the Stokastic projections. Maybe I need to refresh here, but I've got Walker Kessler, I think, is the highest projected. It's possible I'm just missing Steven Adams too.
No, it's possible because I'm looking at my own projections, but they could be, but they're very, these are guys I have very similar, right?
Okay.
Like of those guys, I have the most exposure to LeVert, even though I have the lowest projection on him. It's because he's shooting guard, small forward eligibility, and he's cheaper than those guys.
Yep.
But if there was just no price or anything being a factor, my answer is Adams.
Yeah. And in the Stokastic projections, we have Walker Kessler at 31, Adams at 30. So 30 and a half. So very similar in terms of projection there.
The next question is from, the chat just moved. Here we go. All right. Sean Lewis, Randall, go nom, 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 nom. I think I said all the noms correctly. Could be. That's what he's been doing lately. Center situation's a bit of a mess for the Knicks. And, earlier in the day, I felt that I was going to end up getting to a ton of Isaiah Hartenstein. And that just ultimately did not end up being the case as I went through some of the recent games where the Knicks have been without a center. And if Hartenstein starts, I'm going to be loading up on him. But right now, I'm actually expecting Jericho Sims to start and be in a minute split with Isaiah Hartenstein. So individually, these guys are both viable, but I didn't prioritize any of them. Is there anything for you with the Knicks center situation with whether it's Jericho Sims or Isaiah Hartenstein where they're popping up meaningfully for you?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's going to be if Hartenstein does end up starting, then I'm going to play some Hartenstein. Currently not getting to a ton. You're right. I kind of forgot earlier in the day I was getting just a ton of Hartenstein. Yeah. Now it's all going to Larry Nance, Jonas Valanciunas. Maybe I should. When are we going to have that? We'll have that during the show, the starting lineup, so we can, I guess, worry about it then. But yeah, currently I'm making 51 lineups tonight. Currently have one with Hartenstein in it.
Yeah, and by the way, all the reason to stick around for the post-lock show as well. So the slate locks in 15 minutes, but Neil and I aren't going to be going anywhere because in that last 30 minutes, we're going to be talking a little bit about our sponsor, No House Advantage, which, by the way, if you guys haven't signed up in No House Advantage yet, stop using the link we have below because that's going to get you now up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. It used to be $50. They've recently upped it up to $100, but also they've got props you could play against the house there, and we've got projections to make it super easy to find value over at No House Advantage, like our new NBA Bet Pro tool. We've got No House Advantage loaded in there. It's as simple as later, when Neil and I are looking at, we could just pull up Bet Pro, look at NHA, and just say like, oh, here are some of the best overall props at No House Advantage. So go check that out. Check out the projections we have for them on the site. And when you do sign up there, make sure to use our promo code, the link below, so they know that we sent you. The next super chat we have is from Ace of Spade. Sabonis or LeBron for DK tiers? That is LeBron for me.
Yeah, I imagine it's LeBron for me as well. Do we care at all, like that he's questionable? Like, does that factor in?
I just assume LeBron has been listed as questionable every day now for a few weeks. Yeah. He's going to miss games at some point, but I just have to assume it's fake. If I think he's actually questionable every time, it's going to drive me insane. Because then
hopefully that'll lead people away from him in tiers. I don't know if you can late swap in tiers. So
you can.
Okay. If you can late swap, then I guess it won't scare people away from him as much. Yeah, it's going to be LeBron.
Yeah, it's LeBron for me as well. And then once again, easy. If LeBron is ruled out, it'll be easy enough to just go swap over to Sabonis, especially because the games start at the exact same time. Yeah. Easy 1v1 swap to make. I think you make a good point, Neil, is that even though I think the injury report is fugazi, it doesn't mean other people think that. It could mean that he ends up with less ownership. So I think that is something that could also sway it a little bit in favor of LeBron there for tiers contest. So LeBron James, Ace of Spade, that is going to be our answer. Let's see. Did I get caught up on the super chats? Nope. One just came in from Zarek Mack. Best play. He must be playing the same exact lineup as the other guy because he said best play in the utility spot 5,900 and under before we got the one 6K and under. And I had said Steven Adams. You said Walker Kessler. So those are still going to be the answers. Walker Kessler, Steven Adams. I think those are your best two options there. So Zarek and I can't remember who was left the other super chat. They might be playing the exact same lineup today.
Yeah. So be caution. You might be duping yourselves.
Yeah. My filler arc. Will Bones Highland stop TJ McConnell today? I don't know. I don't know about the 1v1 matchup or anything like that, but I'm not playing very much of McConnell. And I know that he's had some big games as of late, but still, if you look at the way that the rotations have been run for the Pacers, McConnell is not playing a massive amount of minutes as of late. He's had some good games when he has gotten the run, but it's just hard to believe that somebody who's not an outstanding fantasy producer is just all of a sudden this guy who's like a 1.5 fantasy point per minute that he's producing like Nikola Jokic on a point per minute basis. So I didn't really get too much of McConnell today. Did you play him very much?
I have one McConnell lineup out of my 51 currently. He is, looks fine. He's probably coming off the bench. He's a good point per minute guy, but he's not a really high priority with all these other options we have. Like he's projects well enough. He projects for 30 fantasy points, 31 fantasy points at 5,800 on a slate this size. I'd generally rather go elsewhere. I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit more stars and scrubsy for me. So I don't need a guy like 5,800 McConnell.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too is, all right. So the opportunity cost of playing TJ McConnell, we've got Dante DiVincenzo in that same price range. We've got Karis LeVert, just naming a couple guys off the top of my head. And I just prefer those guys to McConnell. And the other thing too is McConnell's been it's always hard to project these kind of guys who there's so much recency bias baked in. TJ McConnell's been coming over our ownership projections for the last few games just because people want to keep riding the hot hand in some of the big games he had. So I wouldn't be surprised if he also ends up being more popular than what his ownership projection is. But McConnell, kind of an afterthought for me on this slate.
You don't think the rants from Jesse and DK on Twitter are going to drive people away? They're going to say, no, he's a fish play. I can't play TJ McConnell.
No, I don't think the rantings of people who get tilted after lock is going to have all that much. Literally
sway. Every day.
Yeah. No offense to
Love
Jesse
those guys. Love those guys. It's funny.
Bruce Booth has left us a super chat. Capella with Seth Curry or with DiVincenzo on FanDuel? I prefer DiVincenzo to Seth Curry today.
Same.
All right. Did we catch up on these? Every time I think I've caught up on them, I get like, it just happened again. Okay. So I think I've answered all of the questions, and then the YouTube chat refreshes and another super chat pops up. This one is from Anthony Lambert. Hartenstein if starting or Green? I assume you mean JaMychal Green. If Hartenstein's starting, Hartenstein easy.
Yeah, same. Going with Hartenstein.
And Hartenstein's a really good pointsman and fantasy producer. He's just kind of fallen out of favor with Tom Thibodeau, and that's something that's impacted his playing time as of late. But I am leaning towards thinking Jericho Sims could be the starter today. If that's not the case, then I will definitely be giving a big boost to Isaiah Hartenstein and be loading up on him. But still, he's not played north of 20 minutes since December 21st. You have to go back to find a double-digit 20-plus minute game for Isaiah Hartenstein. As good of a fantasy producer as he is, because of those limited minutes, the last time he scored over 20 fantasy points was December 9th against the Hornets, and he only played 18 minutes in that game, but still put up 28 fantasy points in those minutes. So I need a Hartenstein to start to really prioritize him. All right, now I think we're caught up on the super chats. Nope, it happened again. Douglas Bowman, how many Golden State Warriors pieces on the main slate today?
Like max in a lineup, or how many are we playing in total?
Max in a lineup for me is 3 today. Not
Same.
because I set a rule, it's just how it popped up.
That I actually set a rule. Typically on a large slate, no matter how good the value is, I set a rule that is 3. I'll expand it to maybe 4 or 5 on a really small slate, but typically I'm limiting myself to 3 from a team. And I think that is going to be the case for the Warriors today. Obviously, there are plenty of good options though.
All right, so let's bang out some questions in Discord. I told you when we were messaging earlier, the show goes fast. We've got less than 10 minutes. Like it seems like if you've never done one of these before and you're just looking at it, an hour and a half seems like a daunting amount of time to talk for. And then you start getting the questions and it goes by like in an instant. So yeah, we'll try to answer some of these questions in Discord that have come through and answer as many of these as we can. Sotex, tricky one here. Give me your top 3 players on Yahoo for single entry. So I did not build lineups out for Yahoo, but looking at some of our projections, let's see, who are the players that I would be prioritizing the highest? So Darius Garland's only $29 on Yahoo. That's somebody that you want to get exposure to. We're talking about Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler's still super cheap on Yahoo, $17. So I'll say Garland, I'll say Walker Kessler, and Kyrie Irving, only $38. Those would be the 3 that I say build around: Garland, Kessler, Kyrie Irving for Yahoo. Got another super chat that just came in. Corey Shea, top 3 low-owned payoff options and 3 low-owned players under 5K. Any positions on DK?
So one player that I was actually just about to bring up because we haven't talked about him at all, and he doesn't project all that well, so I wasn't actually getting a ton, but I just kind of gave him a boost because I think I want to get over the field. Jordan Poole's only coming in at 5% ownership, and he doesn't project all that well just because he is 7,900. But with all of the other Warriors out, we haven't really seen this all that often. I think it's a volatile situation. This is a high scoring game environment. I kind of like Jordan Poole. I guess it's not that high scoring of a game environment, so I'll take that back. But Jordan Poole should have just a ton of usage, or could have a ton of usage in this game if he gets 35, 36 minutes. I think he's going to look. He at least has high potential. So just as a high potential play who's coming in at 5% ownership, I think I really do like Jordan Poole as a low owned, high upside play.
Yeah, I think Poole, somebody who makes sense. As for other low-owned guys that make some sense today. So I think I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is a player that has a lot of upside in the front court for the Grizzlies as a low-owned option, only projected for 4% ownership. Ben Simmons, 7K, another pay-up option that's not... People just hate Ben Simmons. I mentioned this before. I went to the Nets-Celtics game the other day. Nets fans could not have been more displeased with Ben Simmons. Everything he did, they were absolutely outraged by it. Everybody around me was talking about how much Ben Simmons sucks. And it kind of has been shown in his DFS ownership as well. As for some cheaper guys that are not projected for as much ownership, it's a lot of it's going to depend on what happens with the Nuggets. But like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is somebody who's only $4,500. He would be in a more advantageous situation if Jokic is rolled out. Same would go for Bruce Brown, but wouldn't necessarily be priority plays. But just to the salary he gave us before as low-owned guys, these are like 1% owned players that I think are rosterable in large field tournaments. All right, we caught up on super chats. Yes, I want to. Nope. Oh yeah, we did. Okay, that was the one I just answered. So let's try to bang out as many questions as we can that came through on Discord. This one is from R. Schindler. Is Hartenstein becoming less of a cash option now? Yes. If he starts, play him in cash. Pivot to him. If he doesn't start, then yeah, lower priority option. Elder, am I crazy for expecting Looney to play 2 to 3 minutes tonight then see it? No, we've seen this from the Warriors before. Looney has this really dumb streak going where he's played in, let's see, how many games is it in a row now? Like 90 or something like that. I'm just double checking to make sure he's played in every game so far this year. Yeah, so Looney has played in every single game this year. He's played in every single game for the last few years. And it's important for the Warriors, for whatever reason, that he keeps that streak going. So a lot of times we've seen when they rest everybody, Looney plays like 6 minutes just so we could keep the streak going. So I would be very wary of Kevon Looney today. No interest there. Seth1374. You haven't dealt with a Seth question yet. Seth says, crazy Friday night. My wife's boyfriend DoorDashed the Olive Garden and ordered me some extra meatballs. Who is your favorite Golden State player today? Dante DiVincenzo was the one I have the most exposure to.
Can I roster EMAC?
Yeah.
Right, Seth and EMAC. Yeah, I think I'm actually getting, let's see, who am I getting the most of?
My bad. DiVincenzo and Ty Jerome, my two favorite, actually do have a little bit more exposure to Jerome.
Yep, I have a little bit more exposure to Jerome as well. Wondering if I'm getting too much Jerome. I have 65% Ty Jerome right now, and I think that might be just he projects so well. He has had some games in the 30s, so like at 3,000, if he gets in the 30s, he'll be worth it. But I don't know that I'm comfortable with 65% with all these other value options. I think I'm going to cut back there, but it's still probably going to be Jerome for me.
Yeah, and by the way, Chuck Deuces, he said dumb streak for the guy who rips every guy with an injury. This is why this one's dumb. If to keep the streak going, you're going to play him for 4 minutes, it's kind of stupid. It's a fake streak at that point. It's not like, when was Cal Ripken Jr. coming out playing half an inning in the field and then going back to the dugout and like, all right, we kept the streak going. It's not the nature of what the streak is. Shout out to Braden Marin, gifted 5 Stokastic YouTube subscriptions out. So thank you for the support. We appreciate you. Bogdan Bogdanovic will play today. 3 minutes to go until lock. That makes him a pretty decent contrarian option. People are not going to play him with the news coming out that late.
Yeah, it's true. I'm playing him.
Let's get some more questions here. Priorities for the Warriors. I feel like we just kind of hit on that one. Thoughts on playing Nance and Valanciunas together in DK single entry? I'm a little bit lighter on the field I'm a little bit lighter on Nance than the field is, but I'm a little bit higher on Valanciunas. My priority of the two is Valanciunas. I'm not going to say you can't play them together, but I do not have very many lineups of them that are in the same lineup, but mostly because I'm underweight to the field on Nance.
Yeah, I am also actually now I'm back to 37%. I've been cutting back my Nance, and now I'm gonna have to adjust again. But yeah, I'm trying to be under the field, close to the field actually on Nance. He's not coming in like crazy high owned. I'm probably gonna be right there with the field.
Yeah, I'm a little bit under. I'm just a little bit underneath it. He's a good option, but some other guys that I do prefer getting to. Lippy, should I turn left at the right? No, go straight forward. And even if the light's red, you keep going. Don't let anybody tell you what to do. Stick it to the man. Lights red, go fuck yourself. I'm going. There's my advice, life advice for you, Lippy.
Same answer.
Yeah. All right. I think we are caught up on the Discord chat. I think we are caught up on the YouTube super chats. We just have a couple minutes to go until lock. So once again, guys, Neil and I are going to be sticking around for the next 30 minutes. We're going to be looking at No House Advantage. They're playing some bigger contests today. And then also, we're going to get some news that I think is going to impact our lineups. So we have still waiting for these guys who are questionable. And there's a bunch of big names on here. The biggest one, of course, is Nikola Jokic. LeBron James questionable. That one I think is a little bit of fake news. But Nikola Jokic, massively important to the slate. He is questionable. We just got Bogdan Bogdanovic ruled in. And waiting on this Knicks starting lineup. If we end up finding out that Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be in that starting unit, I'm going to be swapping to him pretty aggressively. And that's a lineup that I very much expect us to get because that game has a 7:30 Eastern time start. That is in 30 minutes. We don't have that Knicks starting lineup that should be coming up in the post-lock show here. Neil, number one, are you doing okay getting your lineups in? And
I just got a bunch of lineups in. I'm considering I'm getting to now. I'm down to 29% Jonas Valanciunas, which I think I'm comfortable with. So I was getting like 60%, and I'm thinking like, well, if we get that news with Hartenstein, I want to make sure that I'm not using up my center spot everywhere. So I'm glad that I've cut that back a little bit. Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So we are just about at lock. And once again, guys, stick around. We're going to have some valuable information for you. We're also going to be talking about No House Advantage. And if you guys have not signed up at NHA yet, they got lots of overlay there that you guys should be taking advantage of. And if you haven't signed up, make sure to use our link. You're going to get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit, and it lets them know that you came from us. But let's look at some of the... Mike, can you pull up the NBA Bet Pro on the screen? Because we have the against the house projections for NHA, and this is really easy, Neil, because we could just go to Bet Pro and we could just kind of look at what projects well for NHA and some of the projections they have against the house. So if you guys are in a state that doesn't have legal sports betting, it's a pretty good chance you could play props on sites like No House Advantage, where they have props you could play and parlay and just play them right against the house. And we've got projections for it that are going to make it super easy for you to... Oh, by the way, we just got the Knicks starting lineup. Here it came. Sorry, No House Advantage. Quick pivot here because we need to talk about this. Starting five for the Knicks: Jalen Brunson, Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Jericho Sims. So something I was alluding to, 15 minutes ago or so, is that I thought there was a pretty good chance we were not going to see Hartenstein start early in the day. I thought Hartenstein was going to start. What do you know with this news now that Jericho Sims is going to be in the starting unit? It's, to me, something where Sims, Hartenstein, if you have exposure to either, I would lean towards Sims. He's a starter. Also, on DraftKings, he's power forward and center eligibility. But I think this is going to be a situation where it's a time split between the two, and it's going to be hard to prioritize either. They're cheap enough to where if you had them in a couple lineups here and there, not the end of the world, but I'm not going to be prioritizing Sims or Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yeah, I don't think I will be either. If this is one of those spots where I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, I'm probably just going to lean on our tools. Currently, we have Hartenstein projecting for 18 fantasy points, Sims for 15. I assume that's under the assumption that Sims is starting neither of these guys. High priorities currently. I don't imagine that's going to change all that much. We'll see. If the tools update and things change, I'll let you know, but I don't think either of them is going to be a high priority for me.
Yeah, and let's go through some of the starts for Jericho Sims. First start, at least this round, with Mitchell Robinson out, but we saw him start a couple times earlier in the year. So here are the results for Jericho Sims as a starter. 2 starts, 22 minutes per game, 16.5 fantasy points. And overall for the year, it's typically when you see a big man start, it's kind of a foregone conclusion that these guys are good pointsmen and fantasy producers. It's just kind of easy to pull down fantasy stats and just accumulate points because, rebound some defensive stats. Sims doesn't really do any of that. Sims this year is playing 12.5 minutes per game and averaging under 11 fantasy points. So you got a guy who's averaging well under a fantasy point per minute, and only played 22 minutes in average in his 2 starts. So with that in mind, it's really hard for me to project Jericho Sims for a mass amount of fantasy points because based on what we've seen from him this year, we're probably looking at around 20 minutes. If he's a less than point per minute fantasy producer, you're looking at 18 or so fantasy points. It's not something I'm going to prioritize on a 9-game slate. Does that all make sense to you?
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. I kind of want to look at it a little bit closer just because I'm seeing. So the last 2 games that he started, he did not play many. He played 27 and 17 minutes, put up 22 and 10 fantasy points. He did have a little stretch there right at, oh no, this is all the way back in April of 2022. So this is last season. He had 1 game where he put up 38 fantasy points, a couple games where he put up 27 and played real minutes. We haven't really seen it yet this year.
And by the way, also, because we do have a little bit of a bigger sample size from last year than this year, he was an even worse fantasy producer last year. So last season, Jericho Sims played in 41 games for the Knicks, 13.5 minutes per game, 9.5 fantasy points. So now think of it this way, Jericho Sims. If you're looking at his points per minute rate from a year ago, if you give him 27 minutes, which I think would be an aggressive projection, based on his per minute rates last year, if you gave him 27 minutes, you'd come away with a projection of 19 fantasy points in a neutral matchup.
Yeah, just as somebody pointed this, I can't play Jake Swills. I can't play Sims with all the other good centers. I think that's good reasoning. Like we have a 9-game slate. He could, like we've seen a few games where he's put up like 35 fantasy points, and obviously you're going to want to have that if he does put that up today, but it's pretty unlikely it's going to be. That's an outlier performance, and I'm probably going to go elsewhere.
Again, we got Alexander Bayer in the YouTube chat had said Sims is 3K. Yeah, I get that he's 3K. Like, if you had him in a lineup, I wouldn't tell you it's a terrible option. I just prefer other guys. So that's really where I stand. I just read off the numbers. Once again, his per minute rates from last year. If you gave him 27 minutes, you're getting to 19 fantasy points. If he scores 19 fantasy points at 3K, would you hate it? No. But it's not somebody I really feel like I need to prioritize. So I still think he's going to split minutes with Hartenstein as well. This doesn't mean Hartenstein doesn't play. It means each of them play somewhere around 20 minutes, and then Knicks probably play some small ball. Maybe Julius Randle gets some center minutes, and there's other places that the Knicks could end up going here. So I would expect that we see, and also don't forget something else I should mention. Obi Toppin is back in the mix for the Knicks. This is somebody who missed a whole bunch of time, and his return, he's not starting clearly. He's not playing extended minutes right now. His last 2 games, he's played 14 and 11 minutes. Don't be surprised if Sims plays 15 center minutes, Hartenstein plays 15 center minutes, and then you get like 15 out of Toppin and like 3 out of Randall. Yeah. Like I don't think any of these guys are locked into big minutes.
I agree. So yeah, somebody pointed out that he is popping up in FanDuel optimals now, which I haven't verified if that is true. I will say he is power forward eligible on DraftKings, which I have a little bit more interest because he has that power forward eligibility than if he were just center. So I think he's playable. As you said, he's not a bad play. He's just we're projecting for a little under 19 fantasy points in 25 minutes for this game. He looks fine. I'm going to get him into my player pool. I think he's not going to be somebody that I'm really jamming into lineups.
And by the way, because Sean V in the chat is saying Toppin is not going to do anything. I'm not saying play Toppin. I'm saying if he's on the court at all today, which I assume he's on a minutes restriction right now. But once again, recent games, he's played 14 and 11 minutes. If he continues to play 14 minutes, those are minutes that Jericho Sims can't play. Those are minutes Isaiah Hartenstein can't play. And all 3 of these guys are going to play center minutes. It's going to be a time split. It makes it hard for me to think any of these guys are really strong options, is really my point there. The Knicks have 3.5 guys they could give center minutes to if Randall could play some power forward and some center minutes. And if you were going to give center minutes to all 4 of these guys, it's really hard to get to a really strong DFS playable amount of minutes for guys like Hartenstein, Sims, or Toppin. So that's why I'm not prioritizing any of them now.
Yep. We're on the same page. I'm going to play some, I think, of Jericho Sims, but not a high priority.
Yeah, and also I'll be interested to see what some of our projections look like when that gets updated. I'll give you guys the heads up because maybe there's something that Lee saw that I'm missing here, and if that's
so, I ran a late swap lineup, and I am getting to nearly 18% Jericho Sims now without adjusting his projection at all. So I think that might just be because he's in that power forward spot fill in a spot that's not particularly strong today. I have also, that is after I cut back a good amount on Larry Nance, so that might factor in as well. But it's sort of interesting to see how much I'm getting of him, despite not a really incredible projection. We're projecting for 18.7 fantasy points, and I'm getting to 18%. I don't know if I'm going to cut back on that. I might just allow that. Seems a little bit high, but he, as I said, last year he had some games where he was in the mid 30s in terms of fantasy points. So it's in at least his range of outcomes if he does get north of 30 minutes unexpectedly.
Yeah. Once again, if he was in anybody's line, like 18% is not a crazy amount of him.
Right.
If somebody had 18% of Jericho Sims, it's not the end of the world. I wouldn't play him in cash games though, because I think that's what people are probably going to be asking about and thinking about when it comes to him. It's tournament flyer.
Yep.
And let's see, at least before this news, our projected ownership on Sims was 1% on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he was projected for 3% ownership. Right. So if you are playing him, and it's going to be a little bit higher now that he's confirmed as a starter, but once that news comes out, we'll get back to it, and we will. Here we go. Lee actually said that he's going to project Jericho Sims for 25 minutes. If he plays 25,
that's what we have him for.
Well, Lee is who's doing the projections right now.
He does our projections.
Yeah. So that's why he just messaged me as I was talking through it. So 25 minutes ended up with Jericho Sims. By the way, we have him projected for 14% ownership right now. Projections on Sims. Let's see. What do we have him projected for? In 25 minutes, he came out with a fantasy projection. Loading the page. And also, we have an ownership run that's being done right now as well. But Jericho Sims, by the way, here's how shitty of a fantasy producer Jericho Sims is. With a 25-minute projection, we ended up coming away with him for 18.7 fantasy points.
It's not great.
Yeah, all right, min price, power forward, center eligible. If you had a little bit of exposure to him, it's okay. But it's not, if you're jamming in Jericho Sims, I think it's a mistake. I think where you have him, Neil, 18%, totally reasonable.
Yeah, I'm maybe cutting back. So we actually, from what I'm seeing in the boom bust, and maybe this isn't updated, but it has the updated projection. We're projecting for 2% ownership with a 2.6% chance of being optimal. Is that what you're seeing also?
So it's the ownership's being updated, and then it gets filtered into the boom bust tool afterwards. So our ownership projection on Jericho Sims is 14% on DraftKings. Here, let me pull this back up because I'm just doing it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was 14% on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel, 14.3% on DK. FanDuel Sims is at 21%.
Okay.
Oh, we got the Warriors starting lineup too.
Ooh.
So that's gonna be pertinent news. We're gonna be getting to the no house advantage at some point, but first, some of the news from the Warriors. The starting lineup for the team is Ty Jerome. It's going to be really hard to get away from Ty Jerome. Now, if we're talking about punt plays to get to, Ty Jerome infinitely ahead of Jericho Sims as far as the value plays I want to get to. So we got Ty Jerome, Jordan Poole, Dante DiVincenzo, Jonathan Kuminga, and Kevon Looney. I know Looney is starting, but like I said before, it is really hard to trust him to play extended minutes because of what I said before. We've seen this spot where the Warriors rest a bunch of guys. Looney starts, plays one rotation, comes out of the game, and never checks in just to keep that streak going. I can't trust Looney for those reasons. But now, pretty clearly, play Ty Jerome in cash games, play Jonathan Kuminga in cash games. These are two of the best values we have on the slate. Neil, how do you feel about this Warriors starting lineup? Once again, Ty Jerome, Jordan Poole, Dante DiVincenzo, Kuminga, Looney. Who's the highest priority Warrior?
I mean, I think that's exactly what we were expecting. It's not something that I really give a lot of thought to generally with my who I'm expecting in the starting lineup, but I think that's exactly the starting lineup that we were expecting. So still going to be Ty Jerome and Dante DiVincenzo, the highest priorities for me. Still getting a good amount of Moses Moody as well. I forced up my projection on Jordan Poole, like I said, just because I do think that he has a wide range of outcomes that could spike quite high here. Jonathan Kuminga, I think he's a higher priority on FanDuel than DraftKings, but I'm getting to about 18% Kuminga on DraftKings as well. So a lot of great plays. Hopefully Steve Kerr does not just split these guys minutes all down the middle. But I'm thinking that somebody's going to go off for the Warriors. As I said, I am still capping it at 3 per lineup. I'm not going to have any lineups with more than 3 Warriors, but I do have a good number that have 2 or 3, and just about every lineup that I've made today has at least 1 Warrior in it. I think every lineup that I've seen, actually.
I assume the majority of mine will have at least 1 or 2 Warriors in them. So one thing for me is I actually thought Anthony Lamb was going to be starting, but even with Ty Jerome coming off the bench, he was somebody I was playing a ton of. I am going to have, so I'm going to update my lineups for this now, but I'm going to end up with Ty Jerome in nearly everything now. A min price starting point guard with everybody out for the team. It's just hard to imagine that he fails all that often in this spot. Doesn't mean he has a ceiling game, but it's unlikely to me that he would score 10 fantasy points or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure Ty Jerome is actually going to be my most rostered player overall today. Is he amongst those guys for you, or just a highly rostered value player, or is he somebody who is going to be in one of your most rostered players?
Sorry, did you say Ty Jerome?
Yes.
Yeah, Ty Jerome is going to be one of my most rostered players. I currently have him in 59% of my lineups. I was thinking about cutting back, but with the start, he does have a number of games in his game log with 30 plus fantasy points. Man, he could certainly put up 18 fantasy points and be somebody that you don't really want in your lineup. But I think that I'm going to leave him in there right around 59%. I think I'm sticking with it. How about you?
He's going to be in. I'm going to have him in nearly all my lineups as I'm uploading right now. It's just hard for me to get away from him at this kind of price point. I'm sure he's going to be popular, but I think it's more than justified. We had his ownership before this was 21% on FanDuel, DraftKings. He was projected for 24%. That is way, in my opinion, much too low of an ownership, just considering that he's going to be starting. Now, a lot of people are going to swap to him now that he's been confirmed as a starter, and I'm sure that's going to play out in our next ownership update. But I think he's somebody who, and by the way, must play in cash games. If you guys are playing cash games, they absolutely must play Ty Jerome.
Yeah, absolutely must play in cash games. I'm looking at the boom bust tool, so I'm curious, does this affect you also? He's coming in at 24% projected ownership, 34% chance of booming, which I love to see that, but only an 18% chance of being optimal. Does that make you hesitate at all? Because I look at that and I think maybe 60%, which I'm getting to, is too much. And sounds like you're getting even more than I am of Ty Jerome, but the fact that you don't really need to be optimal in NBA, right? It's not NFL showdown. You don't need the optimal lineup. So the fact that he's only optimal 18% of the time, or 19.5% of the time, not a huge deal. I prefer to look at boom odds, I think, for NBA. But something to at least factor in a little bit, I guess.
And then I'm not sure. Let me ask Lee. I'm not sure if he. So I thought that, like I said, I thought Lamb was going to start. So I did have to make an update for Ty Jerome being the starter. But I'm going to ask Lee right now, and I know he's watching, but I'm going to ask him as I'm typing this to him. Also, did he assume that? As I'm texting him, I'm also typing this at the same time and saying it out loud. Did he assume that Jerome was starting? And
so it looks like Jerome's projection actually came up from
he just messaged me that. So we did increase the projection for Ty Jerome now.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which once again I think makes sense because I did. He was obviously a possibility to start, but I didn't know for sure who was going to be the starting point guard for the Warriors. And I see we got a super chat from Jay. Jay usually asks us about showdown contests. So I was ready for you today, Jay. I've got lineups running in the background. So when those are done, I could answer your showdown question and tell you who I ended up getting the most exposure to. By the way, Vlatko Kankar was just ruled out. Well, that should mean that we're getting Jokic news soon.
Yeah.
How do we get a Denver player and Vlatko Kankar is the first one? Give me the guy I care about. Give me Nikola Jokic. I don't even know about whether Vlatko Kangar is going to be in the lineup or not.
Holding out on us.
Yeah. Give me the good stuff, guys. Jeff Green, Nikola Jokic remain questionable. So we got an update. It's a totally useless one now.
Yep.
By the way, this makes me, I still think Jokic is more likely to sit than he is to play. I can't be as confident in that after this update, though. In terms of before, like I thought he was like 90% likely to be out. But if they've already ruled out other guys on the team, Vlatko, Kangar, and have not ruled out Jokic, this makes me think it's probably closer to 50-50. Whereas before I was thinking like close to a certainty for me that Jokic is out. I'm going to consider this more to a 50-50 type proposition now.
Yep, I agree. If they were sure that they were going to sit him today, they would have just told us that right now. They wouldn't still be calling him questionable. It sounds like if they're calling him questionable now, that means that they probably want to play him and that it might actually be a real injury that they're worried about. Is an injury or illness with Jokic? I didn't even.
It's listed as an injury. It's kind of more like a maintenance type thing, like not like a real injury. What did they say? Like his wrist is sore or something.
General soreness.
Yeah, that's my guy, Jimmy Butler. General soreness. Salute the legend. But Nikola Jokic is listed as hamstring tightness.
Okay.
So not like an injury, but just like, hey, a little tight. By the way, starts to the games. We are about 5 minutes in to the Magic Pelicans game. Strongest start on the Pelicans side is our guy, Jonas Valanciunas, 5 points and 3 boards in the first few minutes of the game. Like to see that. From the Orlando side of the game, nobody's really doing anything right now, which I also like to see. Didn't really roster a lot of those guys.
How's Larry Nance started, right? How's he doing?
No, Larry Nance is coming off of the bench. Okay. But he checked in super early. So he's on the court. He checked in 4 minutes into the game.
Okay.
So he's only been on the court for 40 seconds. So we'll see what ends up happening there. We got some more super chats, and then we'll finally touch on No House Advantage, the sponsor of the show, and we'll tell you what rates out the best for us in our NBA Bet Pro tool. But super chat here from Devin Neiman. He has $5,500 left to roster a shooting guard on DraftKings. Mathurin, Herter, LeVert. That is LeVert for me.
Yeah, I actually really like LeVert here. I made him kind of a priority. I'm with you.
Douglas Bowman, best center, 3,100 and below on DK.
3,100.
That's probably going to be Jericho Sims, because I'm 3,100 is a very, unless there's somebody I'm forgetting about. Yeah, it's at that price point, it's Jericho Sims. You're talking about 3,100 and below.
Yeah, I mean, JaMychal Green is there. Dwight Powell, I got a little bit of, but yeah, it's definitely of the 3,100 and below options. Jericho Sims would be my favorite.
And those guys are really close together.
Yeah.
Sims, Green, Powell. So slight lean towards Sims, but none of those are real priorities. But no problem with any of those. Sims is the answer there. That's injury report update for a different day. Jeff Campbell wants to know Dwight Powell or Jericho Sims on FanDuel. I'll go Sims over Powell.
Yeah, me too. Did they not just say that they were going to not give injury updates for the next day until after like 9 o'clock? I thought they just gave that announcement. Yeah, apparently.
It was a lie. It was a bold-faced lie. A lot of that stuff also, I assume, is automated.
Right.
And then it just kind of pops up. But
I still appreciate them.
Yeah. And I liked it better when sports books are getting pretty good about realizing like, oh, if we put up lines days in advance for basketball, they end up being stale. I used to love those updates because we would find out like, oh, X player's out, X player's questionable. And there would just be a line that sports books would set really inefficiently because it was set in advance. They just don't do it anymore. They don't we don't see DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM. None of those. They're not placing like a Knicks Hawks lineup for a Saturday game on a Friday afternoon like they used to. So yeah, those updates are really useless to me.
Yeah. Sad.
A1 Andy. Powell instead of Hartenstein now that he's not starting. Yes, I do prefer Powell to Hartenstein. How about yourself?
Yep. Same boat.
Zach F. Do we like the Finney Smith value with no wood? Yeah, I'm pretty sure when we were doing the position by position before, if I'm not mistaken, he was somebody that you like quite a bit as a forward. Am I correct on remembering?
I went into about 24%.
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith. He's just a solid point per dollar play at a low cost.
And also potential for extended minutes because, like you said in your super chat there, Zach. It's Zach F. And I just said that is Zeph. Kind of combine those things. But yeah, the key there, Zach, as you said, Do we like Finney Smith value with no wood? Yeah, I think there's opportunity for small ball lineups for the Dallas Mavericks. That could be more minutes for Dorian Finney-Smith. And then also, Christian Wood's a fairly high usage guy. It's just something that's going to help him pick up more shots while he's out on the court as well. The next question we have here is from our guy, Jay. He said he needed help building his showdown lineup for the Lakers-Grizzlies game, and I've got that pulled up right here. So, grand lineups. Captains I got the most exposure to. Number 1 was LeBron James. 2 was Ja Morant. As for the utility players, I got the most of also LeBron James and Ja Morant. As for the cheaper options, Patrick Beverley was somebody who stood out as a punt play. Desmond Bane in the mid-range was somebody who I got to a good amount for this game, as was Steven Adams. So in the run I did, those were my most rostered players. Captain/spend-up options, Ja Morant, LeBron James. Cheap option, Patrick Beverley. Mid-range guys, Desmond Bane, Steven Adams. Those were the players that popped up most frequently for me in the build that I did.
I'm not playing it, so I'll go with your answer.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not going to be playing it either, but he has to super chats on them, and what I've known to do, because he's left us them like every day or so this week, is I just, once we get to lock, I'll just upload my lineups, run some showdown lineups, wait for a super chat, and then I've got it all there to answer.
Nice. I'm really thinking about right now, just as we're getting up to 6:30, putting Jokic back into my lineups, just because he's going to look so good if he does play. He's just going to be so low owned, and if he is out, you can pivot to LeBron. So I'm thinking that I might still give the thumbs up to the other players, but also have some Jokic in my lineups. I'm torn about it. I think I'm going to do that right now.
Ryan Houston, how much would I actually have to be paid to fight Jimmy Butler? I would give him Eric Lindquist as an indentured servant, and he can do whatever he wants with Eric, and that would be the payment. I don't have to be paid anything. I'll just do it to prove a point.
Yeah.
And like I said, he's afraid of me. He has not responded to me on Twitter once over the entire last couple of years that I've been talking about this. Clearly afraid. He's ducking me.
He doesn't want that smoke.
No, not at all. James Magruder super chat. Best 5,400 and under small forward for a single entry, not Golden State Warriors value. So the price point was $5,400 and under at small forward. Oh, Karis LeVert, easy.
I thought he was 55. Is he 54?
54, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Karis LeVert, if not Karis LeVert, or if you already have Karis LeVert, then Michael Porter Jr.
DiVincenzo is also there.
He said not Warriors, though.
Oh, not Warriors. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, so LeVert, not LeVert, DiVincenzo. Oh, he said no Warriors. If you already have LeVert, then I'll say Michael Porter Jr. Somebody who already Michael Porter Jr., I think that he's a decent option. But then if you find out Jokic is out, then you're getting a lot more usage there. Shane Daly, Neil, say my name. So there you go. He said Walter White. I think he did that. Yes. Was it Shane yesterday also who left us the Say My Name super chat? And then we got
Shane Daly. There, I said it. Was that what he asked for?
He did. He said Shane Daly. Utility. Daly. Sims or Ty Jerome? Ty Jerome.
Yep.
Did we get to all these? We did. Discord channel. Did we catch up on all of these? A couple more questions just came into the Discord channel, and then we'll close this out. I'll tell you guys my favorite props over. Sorry, Mike. I know I asked you to pull up the Bet Pro a while ago, but then we just got a bunch of questions that came in. So eventually, I'm still planning on getting that. That's what we're going to close with. Some questions that came in our Discord channel. Miami High Life, best 3K player on DK, not named Ty Jerome. Moody, Sims, Powell, Green. I'll say Sims of those guys because he is starting, and Powell probably is going to start as well, but still, Jericho Sims slightly in over Powell, and I like him over Moody, Green. But for you, Neil, Moody, Sims, Powell, Green, which is your preference?
It's close. I'd probably go lean Moody just a little bit. I feel like I don't know. It is very close there. They project very similarly. Yeah, I think I'll go Moody, but it is very close there.
The next chat question we got is from that dude no clue. Allen and Bogdan or Mobley and Dante DiVincenzo on DraftKings. That is Mobley and Dante DiVincenzo for me.
Yeah, I think same for me.
Tall tale. Walker Kessler and Karis LeVert or Kuminga and Mobley. That is Kuminga and Mobley for me.
I think it might be the other one for me. It was Walker Kessler and who?
Karis LeVert.
That's really
the other
interesting.
Kuminga and Mobley.
Yeah, those are very close.
I like all four of those guys, but in terms of how I'm prioritizing them, LeVert's my favorite of those guys, but then Kuminga and Mobley after that, and then Walker Kessler fourth. But I'm going to say Kuminga and Mobley. I think those are both really good combinations, tall tale, that you can't go wrong with. Iron Maiden, thoughts on Capella starting getting more run tonight? Yeah, before, I can't remember who, somebody left us a super chat and asked for my favorite contrarian plays on FanDuel. And one of them I listed was Clint Capella at 0.6% projected ownership on FanDuel. Yeah, I don't have any real degree of confidence of what Capella's minutes are going to look like. But with that said, this is a guy who's been a good fantasy producer in the past, and he's so much cheaper than he was before. If he plays close to his full minutes allotment, you've got a guy who's underpriced at very low ownership. So Clint Capella, to me, at sub 1% ownership, if you got him in a lineup or two, that's okay. Somebody worth taking a shot on. Did you play any of Clint Capella?
I was just looking at it. I had 2%. I gave him a bump, and then I didn't get any my next run. So I'm giving him another bump. I do want to play a little bit. I'm hoping to get probably around 4 or 5%. I'm not trying to, go crazy with Clint Capella.
But also if you're playing 4, that's 8x the field of him if you're at 4%. So just somebody who's not hard to get overweight to.
Yeah, exactly.
Is really the crux there. So, all right, I've been teasing this for the last 45 minutes now. We appreciate all the questions you guys got. Thank you for sticking around. Thanks for all the support. If you haven't done yet, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. NHA, the sponsor of our show today. These are the props that we've projected the best for NHA tonight. We have Emmanuel Quickly under 13.5 points, which is a prop that I do like today. I was fairly tilted by Emmanuel Quickly the other day. I bet him under 13.5 points. He goes into halftime with 4 points, Neil. And then you know what happens in the second half? Mitchell Robinson gets injured, doesn't play the second half. Julius Randle gets into foul trouble. The Knicks have to play small ball lineups and then Quickly scores like 15 points in the second half. But I still think, even with Mitchell Robinson out, I think it's a little bit of an overreaction to boost up the minutes of Emmanuel Quickly because I don't expect Julius Randle to also get into foul trouble. So I can make a case for under 13.5 points for Emmanuel Quickly. SGA, under 5.5 assists. That's another prop that I like today as well. So SGA, we've seen a downtick in his assists over last month. Here's the reason why. Josh Giddey's playing extended minutes. Josh Giddey's a ball-dominant player. He's a very good passer. So with SGA playing more minutes alongside Josh Giddey, we've seen a little bit of a decrease in assist rate. So those are my two favorite props over on NHA. SGA under 5.5 assists, Emmanuel Quickly under 13.5 points. And if you guys want access to Bet Pro, which has been a really profitable tool to use, we actually had one person who used the tool sent us in a screenshot, profited $33,000 in the first month that he was using Bet Pro. If you guys want access to the tool, 1 week for free by clicking on the link below. Risk-free to you. I believe in the tool. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think the tool will pay for itself, the subscription to your week free membership, and then you can just pay for itself in perpetuity forever. So if you want to get access to that, 1 week free by clicking on the link below. Also, I just saw Mike threw it into the YouTube chat. That does it for us today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe to the video. Do it for Neil. His first time on Live Before Lock. I hope you had a good time, Neil. Have a good weekend, everybody.